Chapter 863. 863 You're a pervert. Lu Ming focused his attention and waved his fingers continuously. Inscriptions flew into the talisman paper one after another. Oh! Grade 9 Lever 6 talismans were 10 times more complicated than Grade 8 Lever 6 talismans, so they needed more time. This time Lu Ming spent a full 1.5 hours before he was successful. The moment the inscription was successful, Lu Ming could clearly feel that in the dark, traces of inscription power descended from the inscription law and integrated into Lu Ming's mental fire, strengthening it. After refining a 9th grade 6th level, the power of inscription from the law of inscription is more than 10 times stronger than that of a 8th grade 6th level. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile and he continued to refine. As Lu Ming continued to refine, his inscribing speed became faster and faster. Just as Lu Ming was concentrating on inscribing the inscription talisman scroll, Bai Qixue had returned to the Cloud Peak residence. This guy is inscribing talismans? Humph, what kind of high-level talisman scroll can this guy inscribe? That's not right, this is a 6 Extremes 9-layer talisman scroll. A level 9 sword formation talisman. At first, Bai Qixue was quite disdainful and just took a few glances at him. However, after a few glances, she could no longer look away and fixed her eyes on Lu Ming. She saw Lu Ming's fingers waving in the air and his mouth opened so wide that a duck egg could be swallowed. She could tell that Lu Ming was actually inscribing a level 6 9th grade inscription talisman. A 9th grade 6th level inscription talisman scroll was already a top-tier, 6th level inscription talisman scroll. Lu Ming's inscription Dao had actually reached such a level. She had only succeeded in inscribing a 7th grade 6th level inscription scroll for the first time under Lu Ming's guidance. Bai Qixue was stunned. The more she looked, the more shocked she was. His usage of mental fire is at the peak of the refinement realm. Also, how is his mental power so powerful and terrifying that he doesn't use any materials? Wait, how is his technique so exquisite and how is his inscribing speed so fast? Bai Qixue was in a daze. She kept mumbling, and the surprise and disbelief in her eyes were getting stronger. Night had fallen but Lu Ming did not seem to be tired. After he finished carving one, he immediately carved the next one. His speed became faster and faster. Later on, he only needed half an hour to carve a grade 9 level 6 talisman scroll. In one breath, Lu Ming inscribed 15 pieces before he stopped and heaved a long sigh. At this moment, he felt that his spiritual power was a little lacking, and his spiritual fire was a little dim. He needed to rest and recover. Miss Bai, you've returned. Lu Ming finally noticed Bai Qixue. Change. Abnormal. Bai Qixue looked at Lu Ming in a daze and blurted out a few words. You met a pervert? Where is he? Lu Ming's eyes darted around. You're a pervert. Bai Qixue mumbled. Me? Lu Ming was speechless. Who the hell are you? The Tao of inscription is so powerful? Bai Qixue's eyes were wide open, her eyes scanning Lu Ming from head to toe. I'm Tianyun. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this insensitive lady had seen through him? I know all the paragons of the talisman amulet sect. How come I've never seen you before? Don't tell me? Bai Qixue walked around Lu Ming and looked at him carefully. Could it be that you're a heaven's favorite that Master secretly nurtured? Or are you Master's illegitimate son? Yes, that must be it. No wonder he asked you to live in Yun Peak House. The more Bai Qixue talked, the more excited she became. Her eyes were shining as if she had discovered a big secret. Lu Ming's forehead was full of black lines. This lady's imagination was too rich, right? Miss Bai, I'm neither secretly trained by your master, nor am I his illegitimate son. I've only just arrived at the talisman amulet sect. Lu Ming explained helplessly. You're not? That's impossible. Bai Qixue touched her chin and blinked her big eyes. Then she rolled her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. After a while, Bai Qixue's face revealed an inexplicable smile, which made Lu Ming's heart tighten. He did not know what this lady was up to. Tianyun, I've suddenly realized that you're not bad. How about this? I won't object to you living in Yun Peak residence from now on, but I have a condition. You have to teach me the Tao of inscription. I've realized that some of your techniques are even more exquisite than my master's. It's decided. You can rest for today, and you'll start teaching me tomorrow. Bai Qixue said with a smile and then ran back to her room. Lu Ming was left alone in a daze. I haven't agreed to it yet. Just like that, as a condition for living in the Cloud Peak house, Lu Ming took 2 hours out every day to guide Bai Qixue in her cultivation of the inscription Dao. Lu Ming's Dao of inscription was passed down from Lian Song. He was very experienced and sharp. He could always point out Bai Qixue's flaws and key points. In just 2 days, Bai Qixue's understanding of the Dao of inscription had deepened. At the same time, Lu Ming became more and more mysterious in her heart. Tianyun, I'll bring you out for a walk today. You haven't had a good look around since you came to the Talisman Amulet sect, right? There are many good places in the Talisman Amulet sect. On the morning of the 3rd day, Bai Qixue pulled Lu Ming and ran out. Lu Ming was also very curious and he followed Bai Qixue. Along the way he saw many strange places. Some of them had beautiful scenery, while others were mysterious. It was an eye-opener for Lu Ming. In front of them a mountain peak appeared. At the foot of the mountain there was a huge cave and people were coming in and out. That's the Myriad Formations cave. There are countless formations in the cave, all of which were inscribed by the experts of the Talisman sect in the past. Some of them are incomplete while others are complete, for future generations to comprehend. Come, let's go and take a look, Bai Qixue explained. Then, the 2 of them landed at the entrance of the cave. There were guards at the entrance of the cave. However, Bai Qixue's identity was not ordinary. She was the little disciple of the Talisman sect master, Bai Shijin. Naturally, she was able to enter without any obstacles. As soon as he entered the cave, Lu Ming could feel a complicated aura permeating the air. Lu Ming swept his gaze across the cave and discovered that there were array diagrams inscribed on the walls on both sides of the cave. There were all sorts of formation diagrams, each emitting a different aura. At a glance, the cave was extremely deep and extended into the distance. On both sides of the cave, there were countless array diagrams. Lu Ming began to read it carefully. He recognized some of the formations, but he didn't recognize most of them. Moreover, there was a detailed explanation under each formation diagram. There were even some incomplete formations that were extremely profound and left for future generations to comprehend and crack. Below were some of the insights gained from comprehending them. Good place, this is really a good place. Lu Ming looked at more than 10 array diagrams and felt that he had gained a lot. This 10,000 formations cave was simply an endless wealth left behind by the ancestors of the Talisman sect. Lu Ming walked forward as he watched. Suddenly he found a fork in the path beside the cave. He walked in and there was only one array diagram in the fork. Buzz! When he saw this formation diagram, the heavens and earth seemed to be shaking. He realized that the surroundings had changed. He was in a boundless void. In the void there were 8 beams of sword qi. The sword qi was incomparably huge, like pillars that held up the sky. They descended from the sky, suppressing in all directions and destroying everything. The extremely powerful sword qi slashed at Lu Ming. It was terrifyingly powerful, just like when he faced Martial Emperor Di and 9 dragons. Not good. Lu Ming was shocked. He used all his strength to resist, but it was useless. The powerful sword qi destroyed everything and slashed down on his head. Its eyes emitted a cold light, and the moment it appeared, it let out a shocking roar. This was a puppet that was equivalent to the 6th level of the spiritual ocean tier. At this moment there were other people who heard the commotion and came over. That's Shushan and Bai Qixue. I heard that a strange man has been living in the Cloud Peak house recently. Could it be that young man, Su Shan's big brother? He has been pursuing Bai Qixue. No wonder Su Shan is looking for trouble with that man. This is going to be a good show. I don't know where that young man came from. He's actually able to stay in Cloud Peak residence. He's going to be abused sooner or later. It must be Bai Qixue's request. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't be able to live there. This young man doesn't know his place. If I were him, I would move out even if I had the chance. I don't know how many people I would offend if I did that. In the surroundings, some people were discussing in low voices. Shushan, what are you doing? If you want to fight, I'll accompany you. Bai Qixue took a step forward and stood in front of Lu Ming, glaring at Su Shan. Bai Qixue, it seems that this man is really your little lover. You are so protective of him. Xu Shan sneered. Nonsense. Bai Qixue blushed and said, I am just friends with Tian Yun. Friend? He. Su Shan sneered, looked at Lu Ming and shouted, Brat, what kind of man are you to hide behind a woman? Fight me if you have the guts. Roar. The black bear puppet roared, exuding a violent aura. Since you're asking for it, I'll fulfill your wish. Lu Ming smiled and stepped forward, passing by Qixue. Brat, I'll break your legs. Su Shan's face revealed a malevolent expression, and the space between his brows lit up. The black bear puppet roared in anger and stomped on the ground. With a loud boom, it pounced towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming swung his palm. Boom! The palm landed on the black bear puppet's body and sent it flying 1,000 meters away. It crashed heavily on the ground and became a pile of scrap metal. The entire place fell silent. A puppet equivalent to the 6th level of the spiritual ocean tier, made entirely of metal and impervious to swords and spears, was now turned into scrap metal by Lu Ming with a single slap. It was shocking. Martial arts, how is your martial arts so strong? Su Shan reacted and shouted angrily. The Talisman Amulet sect mainly cultivated the Tao of inscription. They also cultivated the Tao of martial arts, but they were only auxiliary and did not have too deep of a realm. It was rare to see Lu Ming's martial arts so powerful in the Talisman Amulet sect. Of course, there were also some geniuses in the Talisman Amulet sect who were born to cultivate martial arts. However, they were very rare. In fact, they would be looked down upon by others if they cultivated martial arts. You're looking for a beating. Lu Ming strode forward. What kind of skill is it to use martial arts to destroy one of my puppets? If you have the ability, fight me with the Tao of inscription. Su Shan roared angrily and retreated continuously. With a wave of his hand, 3 puppets appeared on the ground, all at the 6th level of the spiritual ocean tier. Using the Tao of inscription, that's fine. Lu Ming moved his hand and an inscription scroll appeared. He opened it and injected his mental energy fire. The inscription scroll glowed and 9 combat swords floated out. Arc Lever 6 Lever 9 Inscription Rune Scroll. 9 Extreme Sword Formation Rune. You're cheating, you're cheating. Su Shan shouted. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 9 combat swords danced in the air, cutting the 3 puppets into pieces. Lu Ming took a step forward and appeared beside Su Shan. He slapped him. Chapter 865. 865 Chapter 865 Spreading News. The crisp sound of a slap could be heard from outside the Thousand Formations cave. Oh! Then, Su Shan's miserable cries for his parents rang out. Pa! Following that, Lu Ming turned his hand and gave Su Shan another slap, sending him flying. He fell heavily on the ground. Both sides of his face were swollen, and it was beyond recognition. The onlookers were stunned, including Bai Qixue. A battle between inscription masters was not as violent as a battle between warriors. It was rare for someone to go on stage and slap someone. This was the first time they had seen such a scene. You dare to hit young Master Su? You're finished, you're finished. A young man who came with Su Shan pointed at Lu Ming and shouted. Lu Ming waved his hand and another 9 Extreme Sword Formation Talisman scroll appeared. He stared at the 2 young men and said, What's wrong? Do you guys want to try? You're despicable, you're shameless, you didn't use your own inscription scrolls. What kind of skill is that? A young man shouted. When he saw the inscription scroll in Lu Ming's hand, he retreated. Lian Song's face turned pale. They did not expect that Lu Ming had such a high-level inscription scroll. They also did not expect that Lu Ming would be so shameless to use such an inscription scroll. They felt that such a high-level inscription scroll must have been bought by Lu Ming. It was impossible for him to refine it himself. There was an unspoken rule between inscription masters. In a fair duel between 2 inscription masters, they could not use the inscription scrolls refined by others. If that happened, it would not be a contest of strength but a contest of wealth. He would only use it in a life-and-death battle. Moreover, it wasn't easy to activate a high-grade inscription scroll. Who said I didn't make it myself? Lu Ming pursed his lips. He had clearly refined it himself. You're shameless, let's go. A young man left these words and helped the still dizzy Su Shan up, then hurriedly left. The surrounding onlookers shook their heads and looked at Lu Ming with some disdain. They also did not believe that Lu Ming, this kid who came out of nowhere, could refine a grade 9 level 6 inscription scroll by himself. The young men who could create inscriptions of level 6 and level 9 were all top 300 on the list of top 1,000 talents. They were all divine level talents, on par with martial arts talents who had awakened divine bloodlines. How could this unknown brat be a god-tier prodigy? Moreover, Lu Ming's martial arts were clearly not weak. To be able to turn a 6th-level spiritual ocean-tier puppet into a pile of scrap metal with a single slap, he clearly had very high attainments in martial arts. Since his martial arts were so profound, it was impossible for him to be that strong in the Tao of inscription. They would never believe that Lu Ming was so strong in both. Let's go. Lu Ming could not be bothered with the gazes of the people around him. He called out to Bai Qixue and flew forward. Bai Qixue blinked her big eyes and followed him. Tianyun, your martial cultivation is so powerful that you can destroy a class 6 level 6 puppet with a single slap. What level are you at? Could it be that you're a dual cultivator of inscription and martial arts? Along the way, Bai Qixue was so curious that she asked a few questions. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. He covered his head and hurried on with his journey. He was too lazy to answer. Tianyun, Su Shan's brother, is a god-grade heaven's favorite, ranked 299th on the list of top 1,000 talents. You've beaten up Su Shan this time, so his brother Su Ri might come looking for trouble with you. You have to be careful. Bai Qixue reminded him. Oh really? Lu Ming nodded casually. After that, the two of them did not go anywhere else but returned to Yun Peak House. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. Lu Ming was inscribing inscriptions in the courtyard. After a few days of inscription cultivation, Lu Ming's speed of inscribing inscriptions had become even faster. He only needed 20 minutes to inscribe a 9 extreme sword array talisman scroll. This speed was already extremely shocking. If this news were to spread, it would definitely scare a group of people to death. On the side, Bai Qixue opened her eyes wide and stared at it without blinking, trying to absorb the parts that she needed. Not long after, Lu Ming inscribed another inscription talisman scroll. Tianyun, based on your inscribing speed, and with a 100% success rate, even if you don't do anything else, you'll still make a fortune just by selling inscription scrolls. Bai Qixue's eyes were shining. How could other people inscribe inscription scrolls so quickly? Furthermore, they would fail and waste materials. Unlike Lu Ming, he did not want any materials. His materials were only talisman paper. The success rate was 100%. It would be strange if he did not make a fortune. Lu Ming nodded his head. This was a good way to earn money. In the future, when he was short of raw gemstones, he could consider refining inscription scrolls to sell. The two of them chatted. From time to time, Lu Ming would guide Bai Qixue in her refining. Hundreds of thousands of miles away from Yun Peak House, there was another mountain peak with a courtyard on it. This courtyard was the courtyard of the god-grade heaven's favorite, Rising Sun. In the courtyard, Su Shan was crying in front of the rising sun. Big brother, you've finally come out of seclusion. You have to avenge me. That Tianyun is simply lawless and extremely arrogant. Su Shan shouted. You're saying that the kid called Tianyun lives in Yun Peak House. You're courting death. Su Ri said coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent and intense jealousy. That's right, big brother. I'm fighting for you, that's why I'm looking for that kid Tianyun, to get him out of Cloud Peak residence. I didn't expect him to use a Class 9 Level 6 inscription scroll to plot against me. Big brother, you have to avenge me. Su Shan cried out pitifully and miserably. Don't worry. I'll break his legs and kick him out of Cloud Peak House since he dares to stay in Cloud Peak House. The rising sun said. Clang. At this moment, a melodious bell rang. The sound of the bell came from the center of the talisman amulet sect. It seemed to be able to cross endless space and spread throughout the entire Mount Liangyi. This is a Hao bell. When it rings, it means that the sect has something important to report. Su Shan and Su Ri's expressions changed. Then they each took out a voice transmission jade talisman. When the bugle bell rang, the major news that the sect wanted to report would be transmitted to the jade talismans of each disciple. When the two of them saw the contents of the jade talismans, their expressions changed drastically. How is that possible? How is that possible? How could that Tianyun be a Zongzi candidate? Su Shan screamed in disbelief. The contents of their jade voice transmission talismans were the news that the higher-ups of the talisman amulet sect had promoted Tianyun to a Zongzi candidate. Tianyun, the Tianyun who moved into Cloud Peak residence. Sunrise's eyes were also wide open, filled with disbelief. That's right, it's him. How is that possible? How is this possible? Su Shan was still in disbelief. It was extremely difficult to become a Zongzi candidate. One had to obtain the approval of more than 60% of the elders in both the Talisman sect and the Puppet sect before one could ascend to the throne of a Zongzi candidate. In the future, one would have the hope of competing for the position of Zongzi and eventually take charge of the Talisman Amulet sect. In the Talisman Amulet sect, there were a total of 13 Zongzi candidates. Each of them was a terrifying existence in the top 100 on the list of top 1,000 talents with unparalleled talent. Chapter 866. 866 Chapter 866 All parties are shaken. Damn it, who is this Tianyun? How is he qualified to be a Zongzi candidate? Damn it! Oh! The rising sun shouted. Becoming a Zongzi candidate had been Sunrise's dream. He had been working hard for it, but now it had been taken over by a stranger. He was so jealous that he wanted to go crazy. At this moment, the entire Talisman Amulet sect was in a state of confusion. Who was Tianyun? Where did he come from? What qualifications did he have to ascend to the throne of a Zongzi candidate? The eyes of the chosen gleamed with a sharp light. This was especially true for the top 300 God-grade talents on the list of top 1,000 talents. People of their level were all competing for the Zongzi position. How could they be convinced that a young man from the Mo Shang sect would be the one to take it? I'd like to see how capable this Tianyun is to become a Zongzi candidate. Go. Find out more about this person called Tianyun. Everyone in the Yin and Yang mountain was shocked by the name Tianyun. In the Cloud Peak house, Bai Qixue looked at the voice transmission jade talisman in her hand in a daze. Then she glared at Lu Ming for a long time before she said, "You still said that you're not Master's illegitimate son. Now you're a Zongzi candidate." Lu Ming's forehead was full of black lines. What was this? It can't be that everyone has been notified, right? Lu Ming asked. Almost all the Talisman sect disciples in Mount Liangyi have received the news, Bai Qixue said. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and touched his nose. Was there a need to make such a big scene? Lu Ming knew that there would be a lot of trouble. These guys are just looking for trouble. Lu Ming sighed in his heart. He understood that Bai Shijin Du Songjue and the others had done this on purpose. It was equivalent to giving him an indirect challenge. He was a stranger who had suddenly appeared and was appointed as a Zongzi candidate. How could those geniuses accept this? They would definitely find trouble with him. This was the test. Forget it, I'll deal with it as it comes. At most, I'll just go into seclusion and not come out. Lu Ming had a headache. He wasn't afraid of those people, but he was afraid of trouble. Hey, you still haven't answered me. Are you really Master's illegitimate child? Bai Qixue opened her eyes wide and kept asking. She was very curious. Lu Ming was speechless. Can you stop making wild guesses? I didn't cultivate in the Talisman Amulet sect in the past. Not cultivating in the Talisman Amulet sect? Then where do you cultivate? The territory of the Empyrean Heaven Divine Palace? Bai Qixue asked curiously. Almost. Lu Ming said casually. Really? You're really cultivating in the territory of the Empyrean Heaven Divine Palace? Do you know Lu Ming? Bai Qixue became excited and asked a few questions. I don't know him. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat and he quickly denied it. You don't know Lu Ming? Humph, you're really ignorant. You don't even know Lu Ming. In the Battle of Nine Dragons, Lu Ming pulled out the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron and fought against 3 Supreme Masters. It is said that one of the Supreme Masters was almost killed by him. Even Martial Emperor Di took action. How can you not know such a person? He's my idol now. Bai Qixue looked at Lu Ming in disdain, and then looked at the sky with a starry-eyed expression. This? Lu Ming was a little confused. A hero like Lu Ming is the true unparalleled prodigy in my heart. He's comparable to the top 10 on the list of top 1,000 talents. Sunrise and the others are far behind him. Tianyun, you're not bad, but you're still far behind Lu Ming. Keep working hard. Bai Qixue patted Lu Ming's shoulder, giving him a look that said, you have to work hard. I'll try harder, try harder. Lu Ming's face was covered in cold sweat. At this moment, an elder of the Talisman Amulet sect arrived and Lu Ming heaved a sigh of relief. This old man was here to give Lu Ming the token that represented the Zongzi candidate. With this token, Lu Ming could enter most of the places in the Talisman Amulet sect at will, except for some important forbidden areas. For the next 2 days, Mount Liangyi was bustling with activity. Everyone was talking about the same name, Tianyun. However, none of the paragons were looking for trouble with Lu Ming. They seemed to be waiting for someone else to make the first move and test the waters. 2 days later, Lu Ming left Yun Peak House and headed to the treasure pavilion. The 7 days were up. He went to collect the demonic beast blood essence. Tianyun, that's Tianyun. Lu Ming was recognized the moment he arrived at the treasure pavilion. He's Tianyun? He's so young. What kind of abilities does he have to be appointed as a Zongzi candidate? You don't know? However, there was probably something outstanding about it. Otherwise, why would the elders agree to this? I imagine that he might be a disciple secretly trained by one of the doyens. He's only appearing now that the war of karmic luck is upon us. It's possible. The surroundings were abuzz with discussion. Many people looked at Lu Ming curiously. Some of them were kind, but most of them were jealous. Lu Ming ignored their gazes and went to the counter that he had visited previously. Young master, you're Tianyun. The young lady at the counter widened her eyes and looked at Lu Ming with a curious look. If there's no one else, then it's me. Beauty, have you gathered all the demonic beast blood essence? Lu Ming said. It's all here, take a look, he said. The young woman handed Lu Ming a storage ring. Lu Ming took it and scanned it with his mind to confirm that it was correct. After that, Lu Ming paid the 2,500 raw gemstones, kept the demonic beast blood essence, and walked out. Tianyun, stop. A cold voice was heard and 2 figures blocked Lu Ming's path. Xu Shan. Lu Ming could see at a glance that one of them was Su Shan. The other person looked similar to Su Shan, and his eyes were sharp. It's the rising sun. It looks like the rising sun can't hold back, and is going to make the first move. That's for sure. All the heaven's favorites are watching. Someone has to make the first move. Xu Shan was beaten up by Tianyun a few days ago, and the rising sun has been pursuing Bai Qixue. It's reasonable for them to make the first move. I can finally see how extraordinary this Tianyun is. The treasure pavilion was abuzz with discussion. Everyone's eyes were shining as they looked at Lu Ming. So this is the rising sun. Lu Ming's heart stirred. Tianyun, you finally dared to appear. Let's see where you can run off to today. Su Shan said coldly, glaring at Lu Ming fiercely. Back then, he was slapped twice by Lu Ming in public and now he was reduced to a joke. He hated Lu Ming to the core. What's wrong? Is your face going to swell again? Lu Ming cast a glance at Su Shan. Su Shan's expression changed and he retreated slightly. Humph, Tianyun, I'd like to see what you're capable of to beat up my brother. Live in the Cloud Peak residence and become a Zongzi candidate. And NBSP. Rising Sun stepped forward, a blue light flashing between his brows, and a massive amount of spiritual energy spreading out. You want your face to swell too? Lu Ming looked at the rising sun. Sunrise's expression turned ugly, and an even more violent spiritual power spread out from between his brows. stirring up a spiritual storm in the hall. No fighting in the treasure pavilion. At this moment, a voice came from one of the rooms, followed by a powerful mental energy. Everyone felt a mountain-like pressure on them. Chapter 867. 867 Devouring the Blood Essence Again. In the treasure pavilion, an expert came out to warn him. Sunrise's expression changed and he quickly retracted his mind power. Oh, Tianyun, if you have the ability, then go to the battle inscription platform and have a fair battle with me in the art of inscription. The rising sun stared at Lu Ming. The battle inscription platform was the place where the talisman sect disciples competed in the battle inscription Dao. I'm not interested. Lu Ming left with these words and strode away. During this period of time, the Nine Dragons' bloodline had been somewhat dispirited. Lu Ming was worried that there would be any aftereffects, and had long wanted to try devouring the blood essence. Now that he had obtained the demonic beast blood essence with great difficulty, he could not wait to go back and try it out. He was not in the mood to go to the battle inscription platform to compete. If it was something he could easily settle here, he wouldn't mind. Lu Ming left the treasure pavilion and flew straight to Yunfeng residence. He's just a coward. What right does he have to become a Zongzi candidate? Sunrise snorted coldly as he watched Lu Ming leave. Who knows what methods Tianyun used to become a Zongzi candidate? He's clearly afraid of you, big brother, and doesn't dare to fight you. He'll give himself away if he does. Shushan sneered. In the hall of the treasure pavilion, the others shook their heads as well. They thought that Lu Ming would not dare to compete with the rising sun. This rumor had also spread throughout the entire Mount Liangyi. After Lu Ming returned to the Cloud Peak residence, he went straight to his room and sat cross-legged. A jade bottle appeared in his hand. There were 9 drops of pearl-like demonic beast blood essence. It was the blood essence of a Class 6 Level 6 demonic beast. With a thought, the bloodline of the 9 dragons emerged. 9 Asilavira chakra appeared around the 9 dragon bloodline. However, the light was dim, and the 9 dragon bloodline seemed to be a little dispirited. Lu Ming controlled his 9 dragon bloodline, opened his mouth and swallowed the 9 drops of demonic beast blood essence. He then began to refine them. Slowly, the power of the demonic beast's blood essence was absorbed by the 9 dragon bloodlines. The 9 Asilavira chakra slowly became brighter. 2 hours later, the first portion of blood essence was refined. Lu Ming took out another portion of 6th grade 6th level demonic beast blood essence and continued refining. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. Lu Ming had refined more than 10 portions of the demonic beast's blood essence. Finally, the 9 dragons' bloodline regained its vitality. The 9 Asilavira chakra glowed brightly, and the speed of refining the blood essence had increased by a notch. Lu Ming continued to refine. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In 4 days, Lu Ming had refined all 50 portions of 6th grade 6th level demonic beast blood essence. However, his 9 dragon bloodline had not advanced to the divine level. What's going on? I haven't been able to level up even after devouring 50 portions of 6th grade demonic beast blood essence, and I've already reached the divine level before. Now the amount of blood essence I've devoured has already exceeded the last time, so why haven't I advanced? Lu Ming furrowed his eyebrows. He was a little worried. Would the self-destruction of the chakra stop him from upgrading his 9 dragon bloodline? That would be a huge loss. Impossible, it must be because I haven't devoured enough blood essence. Continue devouring. Lu Ming gritted his teeth and took out a portion of 7th grade 6th level demonic beast blood essence, continuing to devour and refine it. Oh. The blood essence of a Class 7 Level 6 demonic beast was 4 to 5 times thicker than that of a Class 6 Level 6 demonic beast. Lu Ming continued to devour the blood essence. Lu Ming was so focused on refining the blood essence that he was unaware of the outside world. In the past few days, Tianyun's name had been spreading like wildfire in Liangyi Mountain. On the second day of Lu Ming's closed-door cultivation, other top 300 talents on the list of top 1,000 talents challenged Lu Ming, but he did not accept the challenge. Then, the rumors about Lu Ming not daring to accept the challenge and his low ability became more and more intense. Later on, there were even geniuses who came to Yun Peak House and wanted to challenge Lu Ming. However, Bai Qixue used the excuse that Lu Ming was in closed-door cultivation and activated the formation of Yun Peak House, turning him away. In this way, the voices of cowardice and incompetence about Lu Ming avoiding the battle became stronger. Some people even suggested to the elders to abolish Lu Ming's Zongzi position and make him move out of Yun Peak House. However, they were rejected immediately. This made many geniuses grit their teeth. They were waiting for Lu Ming to appear and defeat him in public. That way, they would see if he still had the face to continue being a Zongzi candidate. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been in closed-door cultivation for 7 days. Lu Ming refined 10 more portions of 7th grade 6th level blood essence. At this moment, Lu Ming finally felt that his 9-dragon bloodline was about to level up. This time, the amount of blood essence consumed is several times more than the last time. Is this the side effect? But as long as I can advance, it's worth it. No matter how much blood essence I consume, it's worth it. Lu Ming revealed a smile on his face. However, it will cause a huge commotion if I want to level up to a divine bloodline. I must find a secret place and ask Bai Qixue if there are any secret places. At the thought of this, Lu Ming went out of the room and saw Bai Qixue in a daze, frowning. "Qixue, why are you in a daze?" Lu Ming walked around and smiled. "It's all because of you. During this period of time, everyone came to challenge you, but you hid away to cultivate. I got rid of all of them." Bai Qixue glared at Lu Ming and pouted. "Challenge me? I knew it." Lu Ming smiled faintly. He already knew that many people would challenge him. It would be strange if he didn't. "What are your plans? Are we going to go out and fight them?" Bai Qixue said. "I'm not free right now. I'm going into closed-door cultivation for a while. When I come out, I'll pack up." Lu Ming said with a smile. "Clean them up together? You're very confident. There are Heaven's Pride experts who are close to the top 100 in this list. Although the Talisman sect is not as powerful as the Empyrean Heavenly Divine Palace and the Heavenly Corpse sect, there are still more than 30 people who are ranked between the 100th and 300th on the list of top 1,000 talents. These are all your enemies, can you handle them?" Bai Qixue obviously did not believe him. "It's fine." Lu Ming smiled. "Is there a quiet place here where no one will disturb you? A place where you can cultivate in seclusion without causing a big impact?" "Yes, the Wind Marshal Cave. It's not very useful for the cultivation of the Tao of Inscription, so few people go there. Moreover, it's full of caves. You can just pick one and no one will know no matter how big a commotion you cause," Bai Qixue said. "All right, the Wind Marshal Cave it is. I'll go and cultivate in seclusion for a while," Jiang Chun said. With that, Lu Ming left the Cloud Peak residence. Following the map, he turned into a rainbow and headed towards the Wind Marshal Cave. The Wind Marshal Cave was hundreds of thousands of miles away. With Lu Ming's speed, he arrived very quickly. The Wind Marshal Cave was filled with strange rocks. There were huge stone mountains over 10,000 meters high everywhere. There were huge caves on the mountains and strong wind blew out from them. Lu Ming rushed in, randomly chose a cave and flew in. Although Lu Ming was fast, the fact that he had entered the Wind Marshal Cave was still discovered by others. Immediately, the news spread throughout the Liangyi Mountain. "We've finally left Yun Peak House." Many Heaven's favorite eyes lit up when they heard the news. They started to move and headed towards the Wind Marshal Cave. Chapter 868. 868 9 Dragon Form. However, after these people arrived at the Wind Marshal Cave, they all stopped outside the Wind Marshal Cave. Oh! The Wind Marshal Cave was extremely vast and had thousands of caves. No one knew which cave Lu Ming had entered. They could only wait outside. After Lu Ming entered a cave, he kept going deeper. Such dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth. As Lu Ming ran forward, a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. In the cave, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was extremely rich. However, the Talisman Amulet sect mainly cultivated the Tao of Inscription, so the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was not very useful. Therefore, very few people came to the Wind Marshal Cave. After Lu Ming had traveled tens of thousands of meters, he came to an underground cave. Then he waved his hands and runes were inserted into the surroundings, setting up a large array. The main purpose of this formation was to isolate sound, in case the breakthrough would cause too much of a commotion. After inscribing the formation, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged. Let's upgrade the bloodline of the 9 dragons in one fell swoop. Lu Ming waved his hand. This time he took out 10 portions of 7th grade 6th level demonic beast blood essence. The 9 dragon bloodlines opened their mouths and roared, devouring the 10 portions of blood essence and refining them. The rich power of the blood essence gushed into the 9 dragon bloodlines continuously. A day later, the bloodline of the 9 yang roared into the sky. The dragon roars were continuous, and the surroundings were covered in light, isolating the sound in the cave. Roar! Dragon roars were heard as the body of the 9 dragon bloodline continued to grow. Originally, the 9 dragon bloodline had turned back into the appearance of a flood dragon, with only 4 dragon claws on its abdomen. But now the 5th dragon claw had extended. He transformed into a true dragon. But it wasn't over yet. After the 5th dragon claw extended, the 6th dragon claw followed. Lu Ming's eyes widened in shock. The advancement this time seemed to be different from the previous time. After the 6th dragon claw extended, the dragon roar became even louder, and the aura of the 9 dragon bloodline became even stronger. Roar! With a loud roar, the 7th dragon claw reached out again, then the 8th and the 9th. A total of 9 dragon claws. 9 dragons. Lu Ming's bloodline had completely transformed into the legendary 9 dragons. The 9-clawed true dragon was called the 9 dragons. It was a mutated existence among the true dragons. It was extremely powerful, far more powerful than ordinary true dragons. It was a unique existence in the world, and also one of the top 10 war beasts mentioned by Dandan. After the 9 dragon bloodline exploded its chakra, it advanced once again and directly evo-levered into the form of 9 dragons. This was the complete bloodline of the 9 dragons. After a moment of shock, Lu Ming was overjoyed. The 9 dragons roared and the 9 Asilavira chakras merged into one, turning into a golden chakra. The powerful dragon power spread out and shocked the world. However, the Yin and Yang mountain was protected by a powerful formation. The auras of the 9 dragons were completely isolated. No one outside the mountain could feel them. The devouring power is several times stronger than when I was in my true dragon form. Lu Ming sensed it and was overjoyed. He realized that the devouring power of the 9 dragons was several times stronger than the true dragon form. This time it was really a blessing in disguise. After the 9 dragon bloodline exploded its meridian cycle and advanced again, it actually awakened the perfect form of 9 dragons. Collect. With a thought, Lu Ming put away the 9 dragon bloodline. He realized that there was also a dragon energy condensed at his spine. I wonder what's the difference between this dragon power and the previous dragon power? Lu Ming pondered for a while. Then he had an idea and his dragon power burst out. A layer of purple gold scale armor emerged on Lu Ming's skin like a suit of armor. It looked extremely demonic. What powerful strength! Lu Ming's eyes were filled with shock. He felt that his body was filled with energy. Boom! With a punch, the space quickly condensed into a ball and turned into a terrifying energy, blasting forward. Not good. Lu Ming's expression changed. He activated the 9 dragons' heaven-stomping steps and appeared in front of the ball of energy in an instant. He threw a punch and blocked it. Boom! With a loud bang, Lu Ming's body shook violently and he was forced to take 8 steps back. So strong. He's too strong. Lu Ming was a little shocked. He couldn't experiment to his heart's content here. Otherwise, the entire mountain would explode. However, Lu Ming could still feel the immense power. This dragon energy was definitely stronger than his previous dragon energy. It was at least a few times stronger. When the dragon energy burst out, Lu Ming's attack and defense would be greatly improved. The dragon power in the past was the power of a real dragon, but the current dragon power could be said to be the power of 9 dragons. It was normal for it to be stronger. Martial Emperor D, I bet you didn't expect that my self-destruction of my meridian cycles would help me in the end. It allowed me to exert the power of the 9-dragon bloodline to the extreme. Lu Ming's eyes were bright and there was a smile on his lips. However, I'll probably need even more blood essence to transform into the 9 dragons. I still have 30 portions of Tier 7 6th level blood essence left. I'll upgrade the Prison Suppressing Steel bloodline first. After I upgrade the Prison Suppressing Steel bloodline to the 3rd level of the Divine level, I'll then upgrade the 9 dragons bloodline. At the thought of this, Lu Ming continued to take out the blood essence and began to devour it. With the advancement of the 9-dragon bloodline, the devouring and refining power had reached a terrifying level, and the speed of refining demonic beast blood essence had become even faster. In just a few hours, 30 portions of blood essence of Class 7 Level 6 had been refined. Buzz! The bloodline of the Prison Suppressing Steel shook and shone brightly. 2 golden chakras glittered. Suddenly, a golden chakra emerged above the 2 golden chakra. 3 golden chakra, Divine level rank 3 bloodline. When the Prison Suppressing Steel's bloodline advanced to the 3rd level of the Divine level, the power of the Prison Suppressing Heavenly technique would also increase, and it would reach the highest level of an upper-grade demigod martial technique. If I use my full power now and combine it with my dragon power, how powerful will my attack be? Lu Ming was filled with anticipation. The Prison Suppressing Steel's bloodline was suspended in the air. Lu Ming stepped on the ground and his entire person became one with the earth. What is this feeling? Lu Ming's heart trembled. He quickly closed his eyes and began to comprehend. Just now, when the Prison Suppressing Steel's bloodline was advancing, he was connected to the earth and suddenly felt something. This was a kind of inspiration. Some people also called it a kind of enlightenment. It required a chance coincidence to capture this feeling and enter a wonderful state. This kind of opportunity was hard to come by. Lu Ming closed his eyes and seemed to sink into the depths of the earth, becoming one with it. He was the earth and the earth was him. The earth was thick, vast, ancient and eternal. The earth was silent and unending. It contained all living things, moved, suppressed everything, and buried the heaven and earth. It was an extremely powerful intent realm of the heaven and earth. Just like that, Lu Ming immersed himself in the comprehension of the earth essence realm. Time passed slowly. 1 day, 2 days. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Lu Ming was immersed in his comprehension. It had already been 5 days. His comprehension of the earth concept had improved by leaps and bounds. Not only did he break through to level 2 upper tier, but he was also approaching level 2 completion. 5 days' time was equivalent to several months of hard work. At this moment, the area outside the Wind Marshal Cave was already packed with people. Many paragons had rushed here to wait for Lu Ming to come out. There were even more people who came to watch the show. I'll wait here and see how long Lu Ming can hide. Sunrise said coldly. Chapter 869. 869 Great Improvement in Cultivation. Look, even Jimai, ranked 107th on the list of top 1,000 talents, is here. Oh, there's also senior brother Yin Tongtong who's ranked 115th. Senior sister Meng Jia who's 118. Someone cried out in surprise, because they saw 3 extraordinary heaven's favorites. These 3 people could be said to be the talisman sex conquerors who were closest to the top 100 on the list of top 1,000 talents. They were also the most qualified candidates for the Zongzi position. They were extremely powerful. The 3 of them were expressionless and their eyes were closed. They were sitting on a huge rock and waiting quietly. Bai Qixue had also heard the news and rushed over. She looked anxious. Although she knew that Lu Ming was very powerful and could refine 9th grade 6th level inscription scrolls, which of the top 300 divine level talents on the list of top 1,000 talents could not refine 9th grade 6th level inscription scrolls? This was especially true for the paragons of the puppet sect. They could control powerful puppets and had extremely strong combat strength. She did not think that Lu Ming could compete with such a genius. Tianyun, stay in the Wind Marshal Cave for a while longer. Don't come out. Bai Qixue prayed in her heart. In the Wind Marshal Cave after 5 days of cultivation, Lu Ming opened his eyes. It's really an opportunity that can't be sought. Lu Ming smiled faintly. However, Lu Ming had no intention of going out. With the breakthrough of the Earth Essence Realm, Lu Ming's 4 Essence Realms of Heaven and Earth had all reached level 2 upper tier and above. His cultivation could continue to improve. Lu Ming planned to improve his cultivation before leaving. He sat cross-legged and waved his hand. A pile of raw gemstones appeared on the ground, and the 9-dragon bloodline emerged. He opened his mouth and inhaled. The devouring power burst out, and at least 200 raw gemstones exploded. The surging original chi was devoured by the 9-dragon bloodline. Origin chi was the chi of the origin of heaven and earth. It was many times stronger than spirit chi. His spirit ocean churned as his true essence continued to rise. Not long after, 200 raw gemstones were refined and another 200 were devoured. Boom! 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 True essence rumbled like a tsunami, and the rumbling only stopped after half a day. 7th level of the spiritual ocean realm. Lu Ming broke through to the 7th level of the spiritual ocean realm in one go. The area of his spirit ocean had doubled again. However, Lu Ming did not stop and continued to refine the origin stone. After another half a day, Lu Ming's cultivation rose to the peak 7th level spiritual ocean realm before he stopped cultivating. In total, he had consumed 3,000 raw gemstones. Fortunately, I have the wealth left behind by Senior Joyang. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult. Lu Ming smiled. It was time to leave. It had been 8 days since he came to the Wind Marshal Cave for closed-door cultivation. In the past 8 days, his strength had increased to a terrifying level. With a faint smile, Lu Ming walked out. When he exited the Wind Marshal Cave, he was stunned. Outside, there was a dense crowd of people surrounding the Wind Marshal Cave. Whoa, aren't these people a little too enthusiastic? Did they all wait for me here? Lu Ming could guess what was going on. He was speechless. Tian Yun has come out. As soon as Lu Ming came out, someone shouted. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Lu Ming in unison. He's so young and ordinary. I thought he had 3 heads and 6 arms. He's not ordinary. Don't you think he's very handsome? Pooh, love-struck fool, get lost. Instantly, a series of discussions broke out. Many young women's eyes lit up. They felt that Lu Ming was very handsome, which made many young men unhappy. Buzz. A figure strode out and stood in front of Lu Ming. His eyes were dark as he said, Tian Yun, you've finally come out. I thought you were going to hide like a turtle in its shell. Let's see where you're going to run off to today. The one who spoke was Rising Sun, and he was the first to step forward. Lu Ming glanced at him and said indifferently, It seems that I didn't beat you up last time. You're really itching for a beating. All right, I'll fulfill your wish today. Lu Ming strode forward. Today there were so many people gathered here. He would kill the chicken to warn the monkeys, so that he wouldn't be annoyed to death by these people. You're looking for death. Sunrise's eyes turned cold. With a wave of his hand, 7 huge puppets appeared in front of him. 3 of them were equivalent to the 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm, and 4 were equivalent to the peak of the 8th level. When the 7 puppets attacked together, they were comparable to an expert at the peak 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm. Sunrise was ranked in the top 300 on the list of top 1,000 talents and was known as a god-level talent. He was definitely not weak and could control 7 powerful puppets at once. He was definitely not weaker than Wang Haoxian and Long Qianli. The 7 puppets roared and pounced on Lu Ming. Tian Yun, be careful. Bai Qixue shouted from the crowd. Lu Ming smiled faintly. He did not stop and slapped. Many people were stunned. Lu Ming was going to fight the puppet with his body. Many people sneered in their hearts. Puppets were made of all kinds of hard and powerful metals. They were impervious to swords and spears, so how could flesh and blood resist them? But the next moment, their eyes almost popped out. Bang! Lu Ming smacked a puppet at the peak of the 8th level of the spiritual ocean realm with his palm. This puppet, which weighed a few million pounds, was sent flying and exploded into a pile of scrap metal in the air. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming used both his hands and feet, looking like a terrifying god of war. With a punch, a puppet exploded. With a kick, another puppet exploded. Whether it was a puppet at the peak 8th level of the spiritual ocean realm or a puppet at the 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm, the outcome was the same. They were instantly turned into a pile of scrap metal. Countless people rubbed their eyes, thinking that they were dreaming. How could this be possible? How did this happen? An inscriber's main focus was on mental fire. The strength of their body was much weaker than that of a warrior. They had never seen such a direct, overbearing and violent way of fighting, where they used their bodies to crush the puppets and turn them into scrap metal. Lu Ming strode forward and rushed toward the rising sun. Impossible? How did this happen? Die! Sunrise roared and an inscription scroll appeared in his hand. He opened it and a combat sword appeared. He slashed it at Lu Ming's head. This inscription talisman scroll had the attack power of a peak 9th level spiritual ocean tier. However, with a wave of Lu Ming's hand, the combat sword collapsed. Lu Ming's figure instantly appeared in front of Sunrise and he slapped him. Pa! The crisp sound of a slap resounded throughout the entire place. Many people felt their gums ache, and Sunrise screamed even more miserably. His teeth flew out mixed with blood, and half of his face swelled up high. Pa! With a backhand, he slapped Sunrise again, making him dizzy and unable to sense his direction. Then he kicked out and Sunrise was sent flying. He lay on the ground and screamed like a dead fish. Many people drew in a breath of cold air. This Tianyun was simply too overbearing and violent. He had defeated Sunrise so easily. One must know that Sunrise was a god-tier genius. How dare you, Tianyun? You're actually so vicious. You've seriously injured your fellow disciples. You've committed a heinous crime. A heaven's favorite that was stronger than the rising sun roared. Don't fucking grumble. If you want to attack, then attack. If you don't dare to attack, then get lost. Lu Ming looked in the direction of the sound. It was a young man with a jade crown on his head. He was fair and clean. Simply put, he was a pretty boy. Guanrong, who was ranked 259th on the list of top 1,000 talents. Someone recognized the young man. Chapter 870. 870 A great battle against the various geniuses. He was ranked 259th on the list of top 1,000 talents, which was much stronger than Sunrise. Oh, humph, how arrogant. I'll defeat you. Guanrong's expression turned ugly after being reprimanded by Lu Ming. He strode forward. With every step he took, dense runes would appear on the ground. Roar! A ferocious tiger was formed and pounced at Lu Ming. After the tiger, there were also giant bears, pythons, and other demonic beasts. In an instant, more than 10 demonic beasts pounced at Lu Ming. To be able to set up so many formations in an instant, Guanrong's Dao of formations was extremely terrifying. His usage of mental energy fire had also reached the peak of the refinement realm, which was similar to Lu Ming's. As the demonic beasts pounced at Lu Ming, Guanrong waved his hand and 3 inscription scrolls appeared in front of him. The 3 inscriptions were activated at the same time, and 3 flood dragons pounced out with a roar. Their attack power was equivalent to the peak 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm. This kind of attack was like a storm. A normal 9th level spiritual ocean tier martial artist would be drowned by this storm of attacks and torn into pieces. The combat style of an inscription master was completely different from that of a warrior. Lu Ming was expressionless as he strode forward and struck out with his palm. The space rumbled violently and the demonic beasts that pounced at him were instantly destroyed. What followed were 3 flood dragons. Boom! 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 For intense of heaven and earth wrapped around his body as he circulated 20% of the prison-suppressing heaven arts power to clash with the 3 flood dragons. Lu Ming did not dare to use the prison-suppressing heavenly art at full force. The power of the prison-suppressing heavenly art was equivalent to the 6th stage of a high-grade demigod martial arts technique. The consumption of vital essence was extremely terrifying. With Lu Ming's current cultivation, if he used all his strength, his vital essence would be completely drained in a few moves. With 3 loud bangs, the 3 flood dragons were defeated. Guanrong's pupils contracted sharply. In an instant, an array appeared on his body and formed a pair of wings. With a flap of the wings, he retreated like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, he waved his hand and 5 inscription talismans appeared in front of him. 2 of them turned into 2 rings of light and enveloped Guanrong's body. These were protective talismans that were indestructible. As for the other 3 inscription scrolls, 2 of them condensed 2 combat swords and slashed at Lu Ming. They also had the power of the peak 9th level spiritual ocean realm. The most shocking inscription scroll condensed a long spear and stabbed at Lu Ming. The power that this long spear emitted was terrifying and shocking, exceeding the range of the 9th level spiritual ocean tier. If one had to classify it, it would be classified as a grade 10 level 6 inscription scroll. Lu Ming's eyes turned serious. He condensed 2 long spears in his hands and shot them out, clashing with the 2 combat swords. His palm hit the spear. Explode! Break! Lu Ming shouted in a low voice and the long spear exploded. He used the 9 dragons' heaven-treading steps and took a few steps forward, appearing in front of Guanrong in an instant. His palm was like a sharp sword stabbing forward. The 2 light screens in front of Guanrong shattered like paper. No! Guanrong shrieked and retreated like a bolt of lightning. However, Lu Ming was faster and followed closely behind. He stretched out his palm and grabbed Guanrong's throat. With a jolt of his Zhanyuan, Guanrong's body suddenly went soft like mud. Lu Ming swung his arm and Guanrong fell heavily to the ground, right beside Sunrise. Everyone around them widened their eyes in shock. Lu Ming was too powerful. He defeated Guanrong as if it was a piece of cake. This made the other geniuses' faces turn ugly. Haven't you all been waiting for a long time? If you want to fight, then hurry up and come at me together. I don't have that much time to play with you. Lu Ming scanned his surroundings and said coldly. Lu Ming planned to establish his authority today. Arrogant. He's too arrogant. You think you're invincible just because you defeated Sunrise and Guanrong? What a joke. Since he wants to die, let's attack him together and see how capable he is. A cold voice sounded. One figure after another stepped forward, and a powerful spiritual storm burst out, filling the entire area. There were more than a dozen of them, and they were all god-level talents ranked in the top 300 on the list of top 1,000 talents. Some of them were even in the top 200. However, Ji Mai Yin Tong Tong and Meng Jia didn't walk out. Instead, they watched from afar with bright eyes. It was obvious that the 3 of them did not want to join forces to deal with Lu Ming. Cut the crap and make your move. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He had made great progress this time and wanted to have a big fight. Arrogant. Let's attack together. With a cold shout, more than 50 huge puppets appeared on the ground. For every puppet, the weakest was equivalent to the 9th level of the spiritual ocean tier, while the strongest far exceeded the 9th level. The puppet roared angrily. It stomped on the ground and pounced at Lu Ming. A portion of them had inscription scrolls appear in front of them. Dazzling light spread out from these inscription scrolls, giving off a terrifying aura. Good. The fighting spirit in Lu Ming's eyes grew stronger. The power of the 9 dragons in his 9-dragon bloodline exploded, and a layer of purple-gold scales appeared on his body. What's that? Many people gasped. A secret technique of martial arts. Someone said. Boom. Lu Ming stomped on the ground and the rocks exploded. He dashed out. Boom. Boom. His fists continued to punch out, clashing with the puppets. Bang. 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 The sounds of explosions rose and fell as the puppets at the 9th level of the spiritual ocean tier suddenly exploded like fragile balloons. Lu Ming's combat strength was terrifying when he combined his dragon power with the prison-suppressing steel. Not just the puppets at the 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm, but even those puppets that surpassed the 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm would still be blown up. Such a scene was extremely terrifying. The inscription scroll glowed and all kinds of powerful attacks poured down on Lu Ming. There were endless flames as well as lightning, storms, swords, blades, and so on. Every single one of them was extremely terrifying, far exceeding the 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm. The combat strength of such geniuses all surpassed the peak 9th level spiritual ocean realm. Ordinary experts at the 9th level of the spiritual ocean tier would be blasted into smithereens in an instant. However, Lu Ming was unafraid. He was covered in dragon scales and was indestructible. He charged up and unleashed the prison-suppressing heavenly art from every inch of his body. The attacks exploded with a loud bang. Lu Ming broke through the layers of attacks and charged towards the elites. Not good, quickly retreat. The heavens' favorites were shocked. Each of them used an inscription formation and retreated quickly. At the same time, with every step they took back, they would leave an inscription on the ground. At the same time, a large number of puppets and inscription scrolls appeared. This time, many of the puppets actually formed a large formation. When they worked together, their aura was even more shocking. Moreover, someone even took out an even stronger inscription scroll. These people were known as God-tier geniuses, and their combat prowess was already extremely terrifying. They were characters that could contend against the geniuses of the Empyrean Heavenly Divine Palace and Heavenly Corpse sect. They were naturally very strong. However, Lu Ming was stronger. Lu Ming's combat strength was already extremely terrifying at the last 9 dragons exchange. He had the absolute ability to fight against the top 200. This time, Lu Ming's Earth Will had a breakthrough. All 4 types of will had reached the advanced stage of the 2nd level. When they were combined, they were even more powerful. At the same time, the power of the 9 dragons had also become much stronger. It was several times stronger than the dragon power from before, and with the addition of the prison-suppressing heaven technique. His cultivation had also increased by 1 level, reaching the peak of the 7th level spiritual ocean realm. Lu Ming was now fully confident that he could fight Difeng and Shurimo, who were ranked 101st and 102nd on the list of top 1,000 talents. How powerful was he? Chapter 871. 871 Chapter 871 Piled together. Lu Ming's current combat strength could be said to be infinitesimally close to a spirit embryo realm expert. Lu Ming could even contend with an ordinary spirit embryo realm expert. Among the younger generation, he was not afraid of anyone except for the top 100 on the list of top 1,000 talents. Boom! Lu Ming was like an ancient beast as he charged forward. He was brutal, violent as he clashed with the puppets. Boom! 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 He used violent means to break the battle formation formed by the puppets. With a punch, the weak puppets were directly blown apart, and the powerful puppets were also sent flying, their bodies deformed. Some of the flames and lightning struck the scales on Lu Ming's skin but were blocked by them. Bang! Lu Ming blasted away 9 powerful puppets in a row, and appeared in front of a Heaven's Pride expert from the puppet sect. The Heaven's Pride expert's eyes widened and he wanted to retreat, but Lu Ming's palm made him spit out a mouthful of blood. He reached out, grabbed and threw directly to the side of Rising Sun and Guanrong. 3 figures appeared on the ground, all lying on the ground, unable to get up. Bang! After dealing with this paragon, Lu Ming stomped his feet and soared into the sky. He destroyed 2 scorching fireballs, a lightning sword, and a flood dragon formed from ice in succession. He appeared in front of a paragon from the Talisman sect and punched through his talisman defense. Essential core surged in, and the paragon's body went limp. He was thrown beside Sunrise and the others. Buzz! In the next moment, Lu Ming used the 9 dragons' heaven-treading steps and charged at another prodigy like a bolt of lightning. It was unstoppable. All the puppets and inscription scrolls were destroyed by Lu Ming. One by one, the figures were sent flying by Lu Ming and fell beside the Rising Sun and the others. The people who were watching the battle were all dumbfounded. Their jaws were about to drop as they looked at everything in disbelief. More than a dozen god-level prodigies joined forces, but they could not put up any resistance in front of Lu Ming. They were completely crushed and sent flying one by one. Lu Ming threw them on the ground like garbage and piled them up. In just a few minutes, more than 10 people were left there by Lu Ming. All of them were furious and ashamed. I admit defeat. Some of the remaining people shouted and wanted to admit defeat. They were really frightened by Lu Ming's terrifying combat strength. You want to fight and you don't want to fight and you don't want to fight. How can there be such a good thing? I won't allow it. Lu Ming's eyes were like lightning. His figure was like an ancient beast as he charged at the other party. Bang! Ah! Then that heaven's favorite was piled together with the rising sun and the others. Then, Lu Ming's figure flashed and another 2 geniuses were sent flying. Tianyun, this is the Talisman Amulet sect. What kind of skill is it for you to win with martial arts? If you have the ability, use the Tao of Inscription. One of the remaining heaven's favorites shouted. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the puppet protecting him was sent flying by Lu Ming. He was also kicked away by Lu Ming and crashed into the group of elites, causing the others to scream in pain. The entire arena fell silent. The dozen or so heaven's favorites were all gathered together and roaring in anger. This caused the countless Talisman Amulet sect disciples to be dumbfounded. They could not believe what they were seeing. These were the few god-tier prodigies of the Talisman sect. Although the Talisman sect's territory was far from being comparable to the Empyrean Heaven Divine Palace, it still had over 30 large regions and countless geniuses. There were so many geniuses but less than 50 god-grade geniuses. Which one of these heaven's favorites wasn't high up in the air? They were like the stars surrounding the moon, looking down on the younger generation. But now there were more than a dozen of them. They were like a pile of garbage, roaring and screaming. It was too horrible to look at. This scene was too illusionary and unreal. Pa! Some people even slapped themselves ears to see if they were dreaming. Bai Qixue was also stunned. He did not expect Lu Ming to be so powerful. More than a dozen paragons joined forces and they were all defeated in a short time. He was unbelievably powerful. She recalled the attitude she had towards Lu Ming when she first met him. Her heart could not help but beat faster and she felt a little scared. If Lu Ming went crazy, she, a weak woman, would not be able to take it. This guy is so strong but he didn't tell me. Humph. Then Bai Qixue snorted in her heart. Ji Mai, Yen Tongtong, and Meng Jiao were also shocked as they looked at Lu Ming in shock. Lu Ming's strength had exceeded their expectations. The 3 of them were all ranked in the top 120 on the list of top 1,000 talents. Naturally, their combat strength was unparalleled and they were powerful. However, they were not confident that they could defeat more than a dozen divine-level geniuses as easily as Lu Ming. Even if this fellow's combat strength can't be compared to those freaks in the top 100, it's almost on par with Difeng, Shuremo, and the others. My Talisman Amulet sect actually has such a powerful martial arts expert. And at such a young age at that? Ji Mai murmured. His voice was filled with shock and surprise. He was ranked 107th on the list of top 1,000 talents, but he didn't think he could do that. Who? Lu Ming heaved a long sigh of relief. He could feel that the vital essence in his spirit sea had been greatly depleted. In the violent storm of attacks just now, the prison-suppressing heavenly art had not only unleashed 20% of its power. Tianyun, what kind of skill is it for you to use martial arts? If you have the ability, then use the Tao of Inscription to fight us. A young man shouted. His eyes were about to spit fire, and he was extremely ashamed and resentful. That's right. You're a Zongzi candidate, but you can only use martial arts against your enemies. Who would be convinced? Zongzi candidates will have to compete for the position of Zongzi, and then inherit the position of sect leader of the Talisman Amulet sect. If one is only strong in martial arts and not good in the Tao of Inscription, how can one inherit the position of sect leader and take charge of the Talisman Amulet sect? The other heaven's favorites also shouted. And NBSP, the eyes of the other spectators flashed. That was indeed the case. They did not deny that Lu Ming was powerful. If Lu Ming was just an ordinary disciple of the Talisman Amulet sect, even if his Tao of Inscription was weak, he would still be respected by others due to his powerful martial arts. However, Lu Ming's status was different. He was a Zongzi candidate. In the future, he would compete for the position of Zongzi, or even the sect leader of the Talisman Amulet sect. That would not do. He had to have a strong inscription Tao to convince the masses. Otherwise, no matter how strong one's martial Tao was, one would not be qualified to inherit the position of sect master. How about this? At this moment, Jimai suddenly opened his mouth and attracted everyone's attention. Was Jimai going to make a move? Lu Ming's gaze also shifted to Jimai. In 2 months, the sect will hold a competition to determine who will enter the observatory. The observatory is the #1 sacred cultivation ground of the Talisman sect. Other than the 13 Zongzis who will not be participating, all the other young geniuses will be participating. Brother Tianyun, why don't you join us and compare notes with our fellow disciples? Jimai said with a smile. Although he said it tactfully, it was equivalent to an invitation to a battle. He was inviting Lu Ming to participate in the competition 2 months later to fight for the quota to enter the Heaven Observatory. Martial arts were not of much use in that kind of competition. They would naturally know how good Lu Ming's Tao of Inscription was when the time came. All right, I agree. Lu Ming replied indifferently. No matter what, at least for the next 2 months, he would have peace and no one would disturb him. Chapter 872. 872 The Observatory. Upon hearing Lu Ming's agreement, Jimai, Yen Tongtong, Mengjia, and the others' eyes lit up. The paragons who were thrown together by Lu Ming also had different expressions. Some gritted their teeth and insisted on having the competition 2 months later to regain the face they had lost today. Some were in deep thought. Lu Ming had agreed so quickly. Could it be that the Tao of Inscription was also extremely powerful? But how was that possible? If the martial path was already so freakish, how strong could the Tao of Inscription be? The true qi in your bodies will dissipate in 2 hours. Lu Ming looked at the young men who were still lying on the ground. He smiled faintly and stepped into the air to leave. Hey Tianyun, wait for me. Bai Qixue immediately followed him like a little shadow. This made the Sunrise and other suitors who were pursuing Bai Qixue gnash their teeth in jealousy. However, no one dared to cause trouble for Lu Ming. What a joke. Lu Ming was so powerful in martial arts. Was he looking for a beating? Lu Ming and Bai Qixue swaggered out of the place. Your martial arts cultivation is actually so powerful? You actually hid it from me? On the way, Bai Qixue stared at Lu Ming and mumbled. You didn't ask me. Lu Ming said. You're that strong? He should be very famous, why haven't I heard of him before? Bai Qixue was confused. Because I'm more low-key. I've always been low-key, so it's normal that you don't know me. Lu Ming said shamelessly, which immediately attracted Bai Qixue's contempt. You want to keep a low profile? He defeated more than 10 God-level heaven's favorites at once. I'm afraid that in 2 days, the news will spread all over Mount Liangyi. Bai Qixue rolled her eyes at Lu Ming and said in disdain. Lu Ming touched his nose. He was forced to do this. Are you really going to participate in the competition 2 months from now? Bai Qixue asked again. Of course, I've already agreed. By the way, what kind of place is the observatory? What's so special about it? Lu Ming asked curiously. The Heaven Observation Platform is also known as the Heaven Observation Land. It can be said to be the #1 cultivation holy land of the Symbol Puppet sect. It is said that in the Heaven Observation Land, one can come into close contact with the inscription laws. By observing the inscription laws, the speed of absorbing the power of inscription will be frighteningly fast. However, the energy required to open the Heaven Observation Land is extremely terrifying. Therefore, the number of people who can enter each time is very limited. The other 13 Zongzis have already entered. This time, only 3 people will be allowed to enter the Heaven Observation Zone. Therefore, a competition will be held in the entire sect. Only the top 3 can enter the Heaven Observation Zone for a month. Bai Qixue explained. Lu Ming nodded. He had a rough idea in his heart. Are you confident? Bai Qixue asked, blinking her big eyes. She was curious. No, I didn't. Lu Ming's answer made Bai Qixue stumble and almost fall. No? If you're not confident, why did you agree? Bai Qixue said. If you agree, you'll have at least 2 months of peace, right? Lu Ming smiled faintly. Indeed, he wasn't 100% confident. After all, he had only been in contact with the Tao of Inscription for a short period of time. The other heaven's favorites had already cultivated for more than 10 years. This was especially so for geniuses like Jimai, Yentong, and Mengjia. Lu Ming had no confidence in winning just by relying on the Tao of inscription. In terms of the richness of his mental energy fire, Lu Ming was confident that it would not be inferior to Jimai and the rest. One should know that Lu Ming had lit 10 mental energy lamps at every level, achieving perfection. No matter how talented Jimai and the others were, it was impossible for them to reach the perfect stage. It was already terrifying to be able to light 8 lamps of will at each level. Lu Ming's weakness was his usage of mental energy fire. His usage of mental energy fire had already reached the peak of the refinement realm. In the eyes of ordinary geniuses, it was already very terrifying and not weaker than many god-tier geniuses. However, Lu Ming believed that geniuses like Jimai were definitely not just at the peak of minute subtlety. Perhaps they had already reached the realm of heart. The higher one's mental energy level was, the stronger one's combat strength would be when they had the same mental energy fire. His current weakness was the use of mental fire. Bai Qixue was speechless. So Lu Ming had agreed to it just for 2 months of peace. Soon, the two of them returned to Yun Peak House. Yes, I have to go and buy another batch of demonic beast blood essence to continue to improve the grade of my bloodline. Back in his room, Lu Ming was deep in thought. Also, the third bloodline, I don't know why. I still can't awaken. At the thought of this, Lu Ming frowned a little. Many god-level prodigies had already awakened their third bloodline before they reached the 7th level of the spiritual ocean tier. However, he had yet to awaken it. He could clearly feel that his spine seemed to be nurturing something, but he could not awaken it. He always felt that something was missing. Little Qing and Fatty are also awakening slower than others. I don't know if it's good or bad. Also, I can't just let things be in the competition 2 months from now. I have to convince those people so that they won't find trouble with me. It'll be beneficial for me to take charge of the Talisman Amulet sect in the future. Lu Ming's mind was filled with various thoughts. However, it wasn't that easy to make these god-tier heaven's favorites submit. If I can improve the realm of the use of mental fire, I'll be more confident. I wonder if there's a place in the Yin and Yang mountain where I can refine and use the mental fire. At the thought of this, Lu Ming took out the map that Bai Qixue gave him and opened it to read. Lu Ming's eyes lit up after a while. The Mental Energy Refining Hall was a cultivation ground that specialized in training the use of mental energy fire. The Talisman sect was indeed an overlord force that specialized in the Tao of inscription. It had everything. Lu Ming was now a Zongzi candidate. Apart from a few restricted places, he could enter most of the cultivation places. It was a good time to cultivate there. Lu Ming immediately took out the rough stone and began to devour it to recover his essential core. Not long after, Lu Ming's essential core had fully recovered. He left Cloud Peak residence and headed to the Spirit Training Hall. The Spirit Tempering Hall was a large hall, but it was filled with formations and could accommodate many people to cultivate. Lu Ming flashed his Zongzi candidate token and entered easily. After entering the hall, he found that there were many doors of light. At a glance, there were at least a few hundred. Lu Ming walked inside and chose a door of light in an isolated corner. On the door of light, there were words of elementary, intermediate, advanced, and top-notch. This should be the choice of difficulty. I'll choose intermediate. Lu Ming pressed the word intermediate, and the word intermediate shone brightly. Then he took a step and stepped in. When he entered the light door, he found himself in an empty void. Here Lu Ming realized that the essential core in his body was suppressed. Even his intent realm was suppressed. He could only use his mental energy fire. Buzz! A blue arrow shot toward Lu Ming at lightning speed. An arrow condensed from mental fire. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. He could clearly sense that this arrow was completely condensed from mental energy fire. Chapter 873. 873 Training the Mental Fire. Lu Ming's glabella glowed and a more powerful mental energy fire rushed out. It also formed an arrow and shot toward the arrow in front of him. Oh! However, just as the two arrows were about to collide, the incoming arrow suddenly turned nimbly and dodged Lu Ming's arrow. It continued to shoot toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming wanted to make a turn, but it was too late. He could only condense more mental energy fire to form an arrow and shoot it at the arrow. The arrow was finally intercepted by Lu Ming and offset. However, at this moment, more arrows suddenly condensed in the surroundings and shot toward Lu Ming. These arrows were extremely agile. Like a nimble snake, they danced in the air and shot toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming controlled the mental fire, but he could not keep up with the speed of the arrows. He could only release more mental fire to block the arrows with numbers. However, this greatly depleted Lu Ming's mental energy fire. Soon his mental energy fire was depleted. Whoosh! Whoosh! With his mental energy fire depleted, Lu Ming could no longer block the arrows. He was instantly hit by the arrows, and a tearing pain came from his head. His vision turned black, and in the next moment, Lu Ming realized that he had returned to the door of light he had entered earlier. It's only medium difficulty, and it's already so difficult. It seems like I'm really not that good at using mental fire? Lu Ming smiled bitterly and stepped into the light door again. The next moment he was back in the void. Buzz! Around him more blue arrows formed and shot toward him. It was said that in the spirit tempering hall, the amount and quality of the spirit fire condensed from the arrows were exactly the same as the person who entered. In order to completely block these arrows, one had to condense one's own spirit fire. Each spirit fire had to be equal to the amount of the attacking spirit fire. Furthermore, one spirit fire had to intercept one of the other's spirit fire. This way one could finally completely offset the attacking spirit fire and pass the test. As long as the mental energy fire that he condensed was thicker and stronger than the other parties, the number of arrows that he could condense would definitely be less than the other parties. Just like Lu Ming previously, he used violent attacks to block some of the arrows in the front. However, very soon, his mental energy would be depleted and he could only be beaten up at the back. However, these arrows were too agile. It was too difficult to block them perfectly. One had to have extremely precise control over one's mental fire. At the same time, one's control of it had to be very impressive in order to completely block them. Lu Ming was fully focused, controlling his mental energy fire to block the arrows that were coming from all directions. This time Lu Ming held on for a longer time. The arrows that were shot at him were too agile. Lu Ming could not keep up with the speed of the other party by controlling one arrow alone. He could only release a large number of mental energy arrows to surround them. Soon his mental energy was depleted again. The arrows pierced his body and Lu Ming was teleported out of the door of light. Continue. Continue. Lu Ming stepped into the door of light again and again, training the use of his mental energy fire. Slowly, he became more and more familiar with the use of his mental fire. He could barely keep up with his opponent's speed and offset the arrows by controlling his own mental fire. However, it still wasn't perfect. In the end, he would still be killed and teleported out of the light door. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been cultivating here for 7 days. Whoosh! 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 More than a dozen arrows flew in the air. Lu Ming controlled the arrows condensed by his mental energy fire, and continuously blocked the arrows that were shot at him. In the end, when Lu Ming's mental energy fire was depleted, there were no more arrows coming from all directions. He blocked the attack perfectly and Lu Ming successfully passed the intermediate level. Now my usage of mental energy fire has improved a lot, and I'm infinitely close to the heart-reaching realm. Lu Ming thought in his heart. Oh. For two people who had the same amount of mental energy fire, the higher the level of mental energy fire utilization, the more puppets they could control. In fact, the stronger the puppet they controlled, the stronger their combat strength would naturally be. Furthermore, those who had a high level of mental energy fire could inscribe formations and inscription scrolls faster. They would be stronger in both elixir and weapon refinement. This was the benefit of having a high level of mental energy usage. The subtle realm was the meticulous use of one's mental energy. One would not waste a single bit of it and would use it to its fullest potential. The heart limit realm, as its name suggested, moved one's mind and the fire of one's spirit. It was incomparably fast. At this realm, be it controlling puppets or inscribing formations, he was terrifyingly fast. In an instant, he was able to inscribe a large formation. How strong was his combat power? It could be said that when two people with the same level of mental energy fire used their mental energy to the extreme realm, they could easily kill someone in the subtle realm. As for the intent movement and Shenhe, they were even more amazing. Now, the intermediate difficulty is no longer enough for me to level up. It's time to choose the advanced difficulty. At that moment, Lu Ming chose the advanced difficulty and stepped in. He had just entered for a few breaths when there was a flash of light outside the door of light. Lu Ming reappeared. This is too fast. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. In the advanced difficulty, the arrows that appeared were insanely fast and extremely agile. They could make hundreds of turns in an instant. The mental fire arrow that Lu Ming controlled could not keep up with them at all. The moment they entered, they were killed in seconds before they could even block one arrow. The difference was too great. Looks like I'll have to train in the intermediate difficulty for a while longer. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. He chose the intermediate difficulty again and started to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days passed. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lu Ming's usage of the mental energy fire was getting better and better. The arrows condensed by the mental energy fire became more and more agile under his control. Their speed was terrifyingly fast. He controlled an arrow and shot it into the middle of the other's arrow shaft. The remaining power didn't stop and even offset the other arrow. If Lu Ming used one arrow, he would be able to nullify two arrows that were made of mental fire of the same strength. When there were no more arrows condensed around him, Lu Ming's mental energy fire was only left with half of it. Lu Ming's usage of mental energy fire had improved by another level. However, he felt that he had not broken through the heart-to-heart realm. Now I should be able to try the advanced difficulty. Lu Ming exited the place and chose the advanced difficulty. He took a step in. Whoosh! An arrow moved as fast as lightning in the air. It changed hundreds of directions in an instant, leaving a long trace. Lu Ming could not keep up with the speed of the other party by controlling an arrow. He controlled the 9 arrows and sniped them from different directions. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 9 arrows flew in different directions and blocked the incoming arrow. With a bang, the arrow was finally stopped. However, before Lu Ming could celebrate, 2 more arrows formed and shot toward him. Lu Ming could only gather more arrows to block it. This time, Lu Ming only lasted for half a minute before he was teleported out. Continue. After failing, as long as his mental energy was restored, Lu Ming would continue to step in. Chapter 874. 874 Chapter 874 Heart. He stepped in again and again but failed again and again. Oh! Just like that, another 7 days passed. It had been more than 20 days since Lu Ming entered the spiritual tempering hall to cultivate. Lu Ming cultivated like crazy, training his usage of mental energy fire like a mad demon. Buzz! Outside the light door, there was a flash of light and Lu Ming's figure appeared. I know, so it's like this, so it's like this. Lu Ming mumbled to himself, his eyes glimmering with excitement. After such a long period of cultivation, he finally caught a trace of inspiration, the inspiration to break through to heart-reaching. Then, he sat cross-legged and carefully comprehended that inspiration. He sat there for an entire day. A day later, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes had calmed down, but revealed a ray of confidence. Then, he stepped into the light door and stood in the void. Whoosh! A blue arrow was as fast as lightning. It made hundreds of turns in the air in an instant and was shot toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming's glabella glowed and an arrow was formed. Go! With a single thought, the arrow flew out. In the next moment, it accurately appeared in front of the arrow and collided with it. Whoosh! Whoosh! The next moment, 2 arrows appeared and shot toward Lu Ming from 2 directions. With a single thought, 2 arrows flew out and made hundreds of turns in the air, catching up to the 2 arrows and canceling them out. The heart is at its limit. This is the heart. I've finally broken through. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The arrows flew in all directions, but none of them could hit Lu Ming. In the end, all the arrows were blocked by Lu Ming. Lu Ming's usage of the mental energy fire had finally broken through and reached the early stage of the heart realm. However, Lu Ming did not stop. He continued to cultivate. He didn't choose the top difficulty, but continued to train in the advanced difficulty. It was said that the top difficulty level was for those at the level of will. Time passed by quickly. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been cultivating in the spiritual tempering hall for 50 days. There were still 10 days left before the competition on the observatory platform. Lu Ming's usage of mental energy fire had already reached the late stage of heart limit. To go from the peak of minute subtlety to the late stage of heart realm in 50 days was a speed that would leave anyone dumbfounded. Only a 7th-rank alchemist could master the state of heart. A 6th-rank alchemist who could master it was already a genius among geniuses. Anyone could come to the spiritual tempering hall, but who would have such a speed of progress? From this, it could be seen that Lu Ming was very talented in the inscription Dao. It's time to go out and buy a batch of blood essence. It's been so long, I should have it by now. Lu Ming pondered and left the spirit tempering hall, flying toward the treasure pavilion. During this period, Lu Ming went to the treasure pavilion once and ordered a batch of demonic beast blood essence. Soon they arrived at the treasure pavilion. "Beauty, how's the demonic beast blood essence I ordered?" Lu Ming asked with a smile. It was still the same beauty from before. "Junior brother Tianyun, you've come." The beautiful woman's big eyes stared at Lu Ming, shining brightly. Now Lu Ming was a famous person in the talisman sect. Who did not know that he had fought more than 10 god-level prodigies back then? The 50 portions of Class 8 Level 6 Demonic Beast Blood Essence and 50 portions of Class 9 Level 6 Demonic Beast Blood Essence you asked for took a lot of effort to gather. The beauty laughed and took out a storage ring. "Thank you." Lu Ming smiled and kept the storage ring. He then handed the raw gemstone to the other party. Oh. It was a total of 60,000 raw stones, and this was the price after the discount since the other party had bought so many. It's really expensive. Lu Ming sighed. He really couldn't afford this demonic beast blood essence. It seemed that after using this batch, he'd better go hunt for it himself. Lu Ming secretly thought. The raw gemstones left behind by the 9 Sons Supreme Martial Artist were only about 1 million in total. If this continued, it would not take long for them to run out. I still have to use it sparingly. Lu Ming made up his mind. After paying the raw gemstones, he headed to Yun Peak House. Along the way, people who saw Lu Ming looked at him with awe and curiosity. The competition will begin in 10 days. Tianyun's martial Dao might be strong, but his Dao of inscription might not be. That's right. We'll be able to see the real deal in 10 days. If the Dao of inscription is not good enough, no matter how strong his martial arts are, he'll have to step down from the Zongzi candidate throne. Many people were discussing and looking forward to the competition in 10 days. Lu Ming returned to the Cloud Peak residence and saw Bai Qixue inscribing the inscription scrolls seriously. Her jade-like fingers were long and beautiful as she danced in the air. Inscriptions flew into the talisman paper one after another. The peak of the subtle realm. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. Bai Qixue had made great progress after not seeing him for some time. Her use of the spiritual fire had reached the peak of the refinement realm. It didn't take long for him to finish inscribing a Class 7 Level 6 rune scroll. Tianyun, you're back? Where had he been cultivating all this time? How's the progress? Bai Qixue's eyes lit up when she saw Lu Ming. It's all right, there's been some progress. Lu Ming said. Some progress? Why don't we have a competition to see who's faster at inscribing inscriptions? Bai Qixue said, with an eager look in his eyes. Lu Ming smiled in his heart. This girl had a breakthrough and wanted to show off in front of Lu Ming. Sure. How do we compete? Lu Ming said with a smile. What do you think about our speed of inscribing formations outside? Bai Qixue said with excitement. Sure, but since it's a competition there should be some punishment, right? If you lose, how will you be punished? Lu Ming smiled. What punishment? Bai Qixue blinked her big eyes. How about this? If you lose, you kiss me. If I lose, I'll kiss you. How about it? Lu Ming chuckled. Who wants to kiss you? You rascal. Bai Qixue's face turned red. Ha ha ha. Lu Ming laughed. He did not do it on purpose. He was in a good mood after having a breakthrough in the use of mental energy fire. Moreover, he had not seen Bai Qixue for a long time. He just wanted to tease her and relax the atmosphere. It's fine if you don't agree, but whoever loses will treat you to a big meal. Lu Ming smiled and strode out of the room. Bai Qixue glared at Lu Ming, but there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. Outside the Cloud Peak house there was a large open space. It was very wide. The two of them stood facing each other. Let's start. Break. Bai Qixue suddenly shouted and stomped on the ground. At the same time, her 10 fingers bloomed in the air, and dazzling inscriptions flew out and sank into the ground. Buzz! On the ground, a formation immediately appeared, shining with bright light. However, Lu Ming kept smiling and stood there with his hands behind his back, not moving at all. This guy, why isn't he moving? He's really arrogant. Watch how I teach him a lesson. Bai Qixue snorted and took a step forward. The formation glowed and 2 snow-white eagles were formed, flying toward Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming began to move. Lu Ming took a step forward and dense runes appeared on the ground. The runes intertwined and formed a formation. In an instant 9 formations appeared on the ground almost at the same time. Chapter 875. 875 Dandan, the divine turtle of the world. The 9 formations were layered on top of each other, emitting a bewildering light. Oh! The 2 combat swords crushed the 2 eagles. At the same time, vines, chains, and a cage of fire appeared, trapping Bai Qixue in the middle. 9 formations? Bai Qixue was dumbfounded. They clearly did not see Lu Ming inscribing the array just now. In the end, they only saw Lu Ming taking a step forward. With just 1 step, he actually inscribing 9 arrays. This was too terrifying, right? Wasn't this speed a little too fast? Heart of the Earth, this is the heart of the Earth realm. You broke through? All of a sudden, Bai Qixue seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes widened and she looked at Lu Ming in a daze. I was cultivating in the spiritual energy refining hall a while ago, and I was lucky enough to make a breakthrough. Do you still want to compete? Lu Ming said with a smile. No more, no more. Bai Qixue kept shaking her head. Lu Ming smiled. He took a step forward and the array disappeared. Tianyun, you're truly crafty. You've clearly broken through, and yet you still agreed to spar with me. You're too crafty, Bai Qixue glared at Lu Ming, gritting her teeth. At the thought of Lu Ming's proposal of giving her a kiss if she lost, she gritted her teeth. She felt that Lu Ming was deliberately trying to take advantage of her. He had clearly broken through, yet he still agreed to compete with her. He was too evil. You didn't ask for the competition yourself. I never said anything about it. Lu Ming said with a smile. Cunning fellow. There's no big meal to eat. Bai Qixue snorted again and ran back to her room with a proud smile. Hey, you can't go back on your word. Lu Ming was rather speechless. Shaking his head, Lu Ming walked into the courtyard, pushed open the door and entered. Lu Ming was stunned the moment he entered the room. A small turtle was lying on his bed with its legs crossed. It was gnawing on a blood ginseng that was 10 times fatter than the turtle. Crack, crack, crack. He ate with great relish. Dandan? Lu Ming revealed a look of disbelief. It's actually Dandan. Didn't she run away during the battle in 9 Dragons? Why would he appear here? After all, this was the Yin and Yang mountain. Even a martial emperor could not break the formation of the mountain. How did Dandan get in? Lu Ming, you're back. I've really missed you to death. When Dandan saw Lu Ming, she finished the huge blood ginseng in a few bites and pounced on him. Luckily, Dandan had sent her voice to Bai Qixue, so she didn't hear it. Lu Ming reached out and grabbed Dandan's head, lifting her in the air. Then he took a step forward and an inscription array appeared, isolating the sound. At the same time the door was closed. Lu Ming, what are you doing? Quickly release me. Dandan shouted, her four legs dancing wildly. You're as timid as a mouse, a guy who's afraid of death, and you still dare to come to me? How did you get away so quickly during the battle in 9 Dragons? Lu Ming asked. Don't slander me. What do you mean I'm afraid of death? I'm wise. I'm far from recovering. I can't help much even if I stay there. Of course, I have to act according to the situation. While all those experts are out, I went to steal a treasure house. Hee. Dandan knew. You went to steal from the treasure house? Whose? Martial Emperor Di's? Lu Ming asked in bewilderment. Of course not. It's just a small treasure vault. There's not much in it. Dandan's eyes rolled. I don't believe it. Take it out and split it in half. Lu Ming said. No, I really don't have any. Let me tell you, most of what I got were spirit herbs. I've been using them to recover during this period of time. I've recovered a lot during this time and can already inscribe 6th and 7th level inscriptions and array techniques. Quickly let go of me. Dandan shouted, her 2 claws stomping hard. Lu Ming then let go of Dandan. Dandan spat out more than 10 jade talismans from her mouth and gave them to Lu Ming. These are level 6 and 7 inscriptions and arrays. Look, I've been thinking about you all the time. Lu Ming picked up a piece and scanned it with his mind. Indeed, there were many kinds of inscriptions on it. They were very complicated and there were many inscriptions that even Lianzong did not know. Lu Ming nodded and kept it without any hesitation. He looked at Dandan curiously and said, How did you know I was here? Also, how did you get in? I can sense your aura no matter how far away I am. Haha, do you really need to enter this place? Who am I? The head of the top 10 war beasts, the world divine turtle, is more than enough to enter this formation. Dandan burst into laughter. Divine turtle of the world. Lu Ming caught the keyword. Dandan did not mention this word when she bragged in the past. That's right, the world turtle. This time, I ate a large amount of spiritual medicine and recovered a little. I finally remember what my name is. This name is domineering, right? Ha ha ha. Dandan danced with joy, her face full of pride. What's the world turtle? Lu Ming was very curious. He had never heard of this name. You're the plaything, your whole family is a plaything. Dandan was unhappy. She pointed at Lu Ming and shouted, I only remember the name. I'm not too sure about the rest. However, the formation in this place is really powerful. If I hadn't recovered a little, I wouldn't have been able to enter. This fellow. Lu Ming was still a little shocked by Dandan. It was not for anything else, but that he had sneaked into Mount Liangyi. If word got out, it would cause a great uproar. Since you're here, just stay here and don't run around. With that said, Lu Ming sat cross-legged on the bed, took out the jade talisman given by Dandan, and started to read it. There were many types of 6th and 7th level inscriptions and arrays in the Dandan jade talisman. Could be said that there were all kinds of them. It was an eye-opener for Lu Ming, and he was so engrossed in it that he forgot about devouring and refining the blood essence. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. 10 days later, the competition between the talisman sect's disciples finally began. It was to fight for the 3 spots in the Heaven Observation Land. Lu Ming opened the door and walked out. Dandan was lying on his shoulder. Tanyun, when did you get a turtle? Bai Qixue looked over curiously. Oh, it's a wild turtle I picked up from the ravine behind the mountain. It looks quite fat, and I'm planning to make soup for it later. Lu Ming answered casually. This made Dandan so angry that she rolled her eyes and almost exploded her turtle shell. You're the wild turtle, your whole family are wild turtles. Dandan pointed at Lu Ming and shouted. And it's a king-tier wild tortoise. Interesting. Tianyun, let me play with it for 2 days. Bai Qixue opened her eyes wide and looked at Dandan. Dandan was so angry that her whole body was twitching. The two of them chatted as they flew toward the competition. Not long after, the two of them came to a square paved with white jade. At the top of the square, There was a huge jade wall that was more than 3 meters high and 10,000 meters long. Chapter 876. 876 Array Debate with Pictures. One could see that there were inscriptions shining on the jade wall. It was obvious that the jade wall was covered in inscriptions. Oh! At this moment, the white jade square was already packed with people. Countless young geniuses of the talisman sect had gathered here. Not only young people but many older people also came to watch the competition. Look, Tianyun is here. He really dares to come. The heaven's favorites will not let him go. This time we can't use martial arts. Let's see how strong his Tao of inscription is. He actually managed to sit on the throne of Zongzi candidate. As soon as Lu Ming arrived, everyone's eyes were on him. Tianyun, I hope that your Tao of inscription will not disappoint me. Sunrise walked over. His eyes were very cold and he glared at Lu Ming fiercely. What happened last time was simply a great humiliation. Not bad, Lu Ming. I hope you won't disappoint me. Guanrong also walked past. He looked at Lu Ming with a sullen and provocative expression. At the same time, the paragons who had been beaten up by Lu Ming previously glared at him fiercely as if they wanted to bite him. Asking for a beating again, right? Lu Ming's gaze swept across the paragons with hostility, causing them to turn pale. They snorted coldly and walked to the other side. From time to time, paragons would fly over in the sky. Lu Ming saw Jimai, Yentong, and Mengjia. These three people could be said to be the main characters of the day, receiving everyone's attention. The talisman sect had 13 people in the top 100 on the list of top 1,000 talents. All 13 of them were Zongzi's candidates and would not be participating this time. As for Jimai, Yentongtong, and Mengjia, they were the ones who were closest to the 100th place. They were also the most qualified candidates for the top 3. The observatory was also the place that the 3 of them had the most hope of obtaining. Who do you guys think will get first place? It must be Jimai. He's ranked 107th on the list of top 1,000 talents. Although the list hasn't been updated for a long time, I don't think anyone can surpass him. That's right, I think so too. Jimai should be first without a doubt. As for Yentongtong and Mengjia, their ranks are quite close. I wonder who's stronger. I wonder if any dark horses have emerged. What do you guys think Tianyun will be in the top few? It is undeniable that Tianyun's martial Tao is so powerful. No one in the talisman sect's younger generation has such a powerful martial Tao. I'm afraid that the elders have taken a fancy to his martial Tao, which is why they conferred him the title of Zongzi candidate. It's impossible for him to be very strong. At most, he can cultivate to assist his martial arts. That's right. It's impossible to be strong in both. There's no such monstrous person in existence. The surrounding area was filled with discussions. At this moment, a group of figures appeared in the sky, and the entire place fell silent. The Talisman Sect Master by Shijin, the Puppet Sect Master, Du Songjue, and a few other elders had all come. In the sky, runes appeared and chairs appeared. The elders sat down in the air. At the level of the doyens, inscribing formations in the air was a simple matter. All right. I'll be the host of today's competition. A figure stepped out, his voice rumbling and spreading in all directions. It's Supreme Martial Artist Meng Chong. I didn't expect him to be personally hosting this event. The surroundings were in chaos as many people revealed excited expressions. Meng Chong was one of the 5 great supremes of the Talisman Amulet sect. No one had expected that he would be the host of this competition. The 2 sect masters were also present. It seemed like this competition was very important to them. Many people rubbed their fists and wiped their palms, preparing to put on a good performance later. If they were taken in as a disciple by any of the elders, they would be rich. This competition will be divided into 3 stages. The first stage is to identify formations on the white jade wall. The second stage is to challenge the 10,000 formation pagoda. The second stage is to compete with each other. Now let's begin the first stage. Meng Chong announced and flew towards the 10,000-meter-long jade wall. He waved his hand and a landscape painting appeared on the wall. For us inscription masters, first of all, our eyesight is very important. If we enter a dangerous place full of formations, we must first be able to see and identify where there are formations and where there are none. Take this landscape painting as an example. There are many formations on it. What you need to do is to find a formation from this painting. Find one formation and obtain 1 point. Those who do not have 10 points will be eliminated. Those who have more than 10 points will advance to the next round. As he said this, Meng Chong extended his finger and pointed at a corner of the painting. With a loud roar, a huge tiger flew out from the painting. This meant that there was a formation here. Now, do you understand? Meng Chong looked around and shouted. Understood. Everyone responded. More importantly, you have to be extremely careful when searching for a formation. If you find the wrong one, you'll be eliminated. Thus, if you're not confident in your chances, it's best not to act recklessly. Alright, wait a moment. There will be many paintings on the white jade wall, and the difficulty will be the same. However, the paintings will be different, so you can choose whatever you want. Come up and identify them, Meng Chong announced. Then 2 elders appeared on both sides of the jade wall. With a wave of their hands, inscriptions were inserted into the white jade wall. Instantly, the 10,000-meter-long white jade wall began to glow, and pictures began to appear. There was a painting every meter. There were 5,000 paintings on the white jade wall, and they were all different. There were scenes of mountains, rivers, demonic beasts, and great battles. All 6th-level alchemists under the age of 30 can go up the stage, Meng Chong ordered. Buzz. An NBSP whoosh. Oh. Immediately, many figures flew up and landed under the white jade wall. They randomly chose a picture. Let's go too, Bai Qixue said. Lu Ming nodded. He and Bai Qixue flew up and landed under the white jade wall. They each chose a painting. Not long after, out of the 5,000 chapters, more than 3,000 paintings were chosen. In other words, there were more than 3,000 6th-level alchemists under the age of 30. This number was not bad. Of course, most of them were ordinary and could not be considered heaven's favorites. As soon as they landed on the white jade wall, many people began to observe it quietly, trying to identify the formation. The surrounding spectators also quieted down so as not to disturb the competition. The painting that Lu Ming chose was a landscape painting. A swordsman carrying a long sword on his back was walking on a mountain path. Lu Ming's gaze swept across the area. Blue mental energy fire emanated from his fingers, and he tapped on the branch of a small tree. Instantly, a Silavira combat sword flew out and then disappeared. On the upper right corner of the picture, a number appeared. 1. It meant 1 point. Under the white jade wall, the others also waved their hands and pointed. On the wall, all kinds of lights flashed continuously. There were weapons, demonic beasts, flames, lightning, and so on. The scene was incomparably magnificent and dazzling. It was a spectacular sight to see from afar. In the beginning, everyone's speed in finding the array was very fast. However, after finding 5 formations, many people slowed down. In the picture scroll, some formations were relatively simple and easy to recognize, while some formations were very well hidden and difficult to recognize. Chapter 877. 877 increasing at a constant speed. Many people began to frown and ponder, their eyes fixed on the painting. Oh, buzz. Suddenly, someone pointed out a finger and the entire painting shone brightly. Then the painting disappeared from the wall in a flash. AI. That person sighed. He had chosen the wrong person, and the picture disappeared, becoming the first person to be eliminated. Seeing that someone had been eliminated by the wrong call, the others became even more careful and didn't dare to rashly make a move. However, the competition had a time limit of half an hour. Once the time was up, those who had less than 10 points would also be eliminated. Some people were deep in thought, but some people were still very fast. It was as if they didn't need to think. Their fingers continued to point out, and one formation after another was found. These people were all Heaven's Pride level figures. A Heaven's favorite is indeed a Heaven's favorite. His eyesight is extraordinary. He was able to identify a formation just by pointing at it casually. How amazing! Of course, an alchemist's eyesight is very important. If you don't have good eyesight, you won't be able to become a heaven's favorite. Look, Jimai, Yen Tong Tong and Mengjia are the fastest. They've already found 20 formations without much consideration. This is shocking. Look, the other chosen have also found more than 10 spell formations. The first round of the test is not difficult for them at all. Look, that Tianyun is so fast he's actually found more than 10. Could it be that his Tao of inscription is also so amazing? Some people were discussing. In the end, they looked at Lu Ming in surprise. That's normal. The strength of the Tianyun martial arts shows that he's very intelligent. Even if he helps with the path of inscription, he won't be too bad. It's normal for him to pass the first round. Not bad. Some of the older generation spoke, and the others nodded. During this period Bai Shijin Du Songjue, and the other elders watched with interest. However, their gazes were mostly on Lu Ming. They were very clear that Lu Ming's first 5 levels were at the perfect stage. However, mental energy fire alone was not enough to master the Tao of inscription. One's eyesight, the use of mental energy fire, the number of inscriptions and arrays one had mastered, and the strength of one's understanding were all very important. If he only had a strong mental fire and nothing else, he would be useless. It was like a person who had great strength, but did not know any martial arts techniques or battle experience. Then, his strength would not be able to exert its original effect. The competition this time was also a test for Lu Ming. Otherwise, why would all of them appear in a competition between the younger generation? Lu Ming's expression was calm as he continued to point his fingers. He was neither fast nor slow. He maintained a uniform movement. It did not seem to be very fast, slower than Ji Mai and the rest. Very soon, Lu Ming had found 20 formations. However, his speed was still the same, neither fast nor slow. In the arena, there were people who continuously made mistakes and were eliminated. There were fewer and fewer people. In the end, many people didn't dare to make a move. They stared at the picture with bloodshot eyes. Some people found more than 10 formations, and without full confidence, they would not dare to make a move. If there were more than 10 people, they could already pass and enter the next round. If they made another move and pointed out the wrong number, they would really vomit blood. Slowly, many people stopped and looked at the others. At this moment, Ji Mai, Yen Tong Tong, and Mengjia had already found more than 50 formations. At this point, their speed had already started to slow down. Sometimes they needed to think for a while before pointing out a finger. As for Guanrong and the other God-tier heaven's favorites, he had found more than 40 of them. However, his speed was much slower. He had to think for a while before he could find one. Sunrise, in particular, had already found 43 formations. He was frowning and his eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the picture on the white jade wall, but he couldn't find the 44th formation. At this time, Lu Ming's speed was still at a moderate pace. There was no change in his speed compared to before. He pointed with his finger continuously and the number of arrays he found kept increasing. 30, 40, 50. Very soon, the number of arrays that Lu Ming had found had exceeded 50. However, the speed did not slow down and it was still increasing. At this moment, many people's gazes were attracted to Lu Ming. Guys, look! Tianyun has already found more than 50 formations, and it's still increasing. What's going on? He's not slowing down at all, he's so fast. He's almost catching up to Ji Mai and the others. How did this happen? The surrounding discussions affected even more people. Countless eyes looked at Lu Ming. First they were puzzled, but slowly they turned into shock. When the number of formations Ji Mai found reached 60, Lu Ming's number also reached 60. However, the number of formations that Lu Ming found exceeded 60 and he became the first. This was shocking. No one had expected that Lu Ming could actually find so many arrays. The key was that the speed of his finger was still maintained at a constant speed, as if he didn't need to think. At that moment, even the geniuses who were taking part in the competition below the white jade wall had their eyes on Lu Ming. Sunrise's eyes were bloodshot. He pondered for a long time but could not find 44 arrays. When he heard the movement beside him, he looked at Lu Ming. With one look, his pupils suddenly widened, revealing a look of disbelief, and he shrieked, "How is that possible? How could he have found so many? It's impossible." He simply couldn't believe it and didn't dare to believe it. Slowly, even Jimai, Yentong, and Mengjia stopped searching. They looked at Lu Ming in surprise. Lu Ming was still not slow. He pointed his fingers at a uniform speed and one by one, the arrays were found. This Tianyun couldn't possibly be able to find all the formations, right? That's too terrifying. Look, he's not even slowing down. I know now. From the start, he maintained a speed that was neither too fast nor too slow. That way, he would have enough time to think and identify. However, my Ji and the others were too fast at the start, so they would have to slow down to think later on. I think Tianyun will stop soon, so he can't be as strong as my Ji. Someone voiced out his thoughts, causing many to nod in agreement. In the Sky by Shijin Du Songjue, and a few others had faint smiles on their faces. They were very calm, and no one knew what they were thinking. However, as the number of arrays that Lu Ming found increased, his speed did not seem to slow down at all. The number of arrays that he found continued to increase. Very quickly, it exceeded 70, and the number was increasing at a constant rate. 71, 72. Those who thought that Lu Ming would stop immediately were dumbfounded, and their faces were flushed red. Everyone's eyes were focused on Lu Ming. They stared at him and wanted to see how many Lu Ming could find. When Lu Ming clicked on the 76th option, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at his surroundings. Who? The crowd that was watching heaved a long sigh of relief. Lu Ming finally stopped. Chapter 878. 878 99 Formations. Look, I was right, wasn't I? He kept a moderate speed in the beginning so that he had time to think. But he has his limit and now he has reached it. I bet he has reached the end and can't find the next array. Oh, the person who had spoken earlier immediately spoke again, winning the approval of the crowd. That's right. 76 should be his limit. However, it's already terrifying. I don't think Jimai and the others can exceed this number. I didn't expect that Tianyun's eyes would be so sharp. Many people sighed in disgust. Lu Ming looked at his surroundings in surprise. The reason he stopped wasn't because he couldn't find it, but because he suddenly felt eyes on him from all directions. He was surprised, so he stopped. At this time, he looked around and saw that there was nothing. Lu Ming looked at the picture again, stretched out his finger and pointed. The 3 combat swords slashed out and then disappeared in the air. Another array was found. Then Lu Ming started to point at it at a uniform speed. The 78th, 79th, 80th. In a few breaths, Lu Ming had found more than 80 arrays and the number was still increasing. Everyone present was dumbfounded. The person who had spoken earlier almost bit his tongue, and his face turned red. He had just said with certainty that Lu Ming had reached his limit, and it was impossible to find the next one. However, he was immediately slapped in the face and he felt his face burning. How many can he find? I don't know. Tianyun's speed has always been constant. I can't guess. It said that there are a total of 99 formations on a painting. He won't find all of them, will he? That shouldn't be possible. In history, there are very few people who could find all the formations. Even those supreme beings didn't have this skill when they were young. The discussion continued without stopping. Jimai, Mengjia, and the rest all stopped and stared at Lu Ming. At this moment, they already knew that they would definitely lose as they were identifying the formation quickly. They could not beat Lu Ming. They were even more curious about how many Lu Ming could find. Damn it! How did this happen? Sunrise's eyes were red and he growled. He had always harbored a grudge against Lu Ming after being abused by him the last time. However, he could not defeat Lu Ming. He had always wanted to humiliate Lu Ming in the Tao of Inscription in this competition. But now, the array that Lu Ming found was far superior to his. How could he humiliate him? Interesting. In the Air by Shijin Du Songjue, and the others all revealed expressions of interest. Lu Ming had no other thoughts in his mind. He pointed his finger continuously and had no intention of stopping. He had received the inheritance from Lian Song, so he knew a lot of inscriptions and formations. Also, the inscriptions and formations that Dandan had given him were even more complex and had all kinds of things. The formations on these drawings were only meant to test the young, so how could they possibly stump him? The number of formations he found continued to increase, and soon it exceeded 90, but it did not stop. Very quickly 96, 97, 98. Finally, Lu Ming pointed with a finger. The sound of a sword whistling reverberated throughout the square. 99. Lu Ming had found 99 formations. At this moment, Lu Ming finally stopped because he realized that there was no more formation on the picture. At this moment, the entire place was silent. Everyone looked at Lu Ming in a daze. Their eyes were wide open and they could not say a word. It was too shocking. Lu Ming had actually found all the array techniques. This was beyond everyone's expectations. In the history of the Talisman Amulet sect, this had only happened a few times. Could it be that Lu Ming's inscription skills were also so terrifying that they were above his martial arts? How was this possible? How could there be such an abnormal person in the world? Being good at identifying formations doesn't mean that one's Tao of inscriptions is good. Identifying formations tests one's knowledge and insight. Perhaps Tianyun has seen many inscriptions and formations before, which is why he's so good at identifying formations. That's right. There have been people like that in history. The cultivation level and usage of mental fire were very poor. However, due to his extensive reading, he has very good eyesight and is very good at identifying arrays. Perhaps Lu Ming is such a person. Yes, it must be like this. Many people agreed. It seemed that this was the only way to make them feel better. Impossible, this is impossible. At this moment, a loud shout suddenly reverberated through the entire area. Everyone's gaze turned to the person who had shouted sunrise. The person who shouted was Sunrise. Suarai's eyes were red as he glared at Lu Ming and roared, Tianyun, it's impossible for you to find all the formations. You're cheating, you're definitely cheating. Lu Ming sneered. He looked at the rising sun and said, which eye of yours saw me cheating? Also, there are so many people here, did anyone see me cheating? Maybe you're just lucky and picked a very simple picture. There are a total of 5,000 pictures here, so it's normal for you to pick a simple one. Sunrise gritted his teeth and shouted. At this moment he was filled with jealousy. He had completely forgotten that Meng Chong had said that the difficulty of these 5,000 drawings was the same. The reason why he said this was because he was suspicious of Meng Chong, a supreme martial artist. Nonsense. As expected, Meng Chong's face darkened. He looked at the rising sun and snorted. Sunrise shuddered but still gritted his teeth and looked at Lu Ming. He did not believe that Lu Ming could really find all the arrays. He still believed that Lu Ming was lucky and had chosen a simple picture. In the crowd, there were also people who revealed thoughtful expressions. Some people had the same thoughts as the rising sun. After all, there were a total of 5,000 drawings on the white jade wall, and every one of them was different. It was too difficult to ensure that the difficulty of all 5,000 drawings was the same. Perhaps there were some drawings that were relatively easier. Many people had such thoughts. They were no longer as shocked as they were when they looked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's expression was calm. He looked at the rising sun indifferently and said, "So you're saying that the difficulty of your painting is very high? At least it's harder than yours." Sunrise said coldly. Lu Ming smiled and strode toward the rising sun. What are you trying to do?" Sunrise's body trembled, and he could not help but take a step back. He was still traumatized after being beaten up by Lu Ming for a while previously. He was afraid that Lu Ming would fly into a rage out of humiliation and beat him up again. "You're really trash." Lu Ming pursed his lips, making Sunrise's face turn ashen. "You found 43 formations? This is your result? You think you can be called a god-tier heaven's favorite?" Lu Ming sneered. The difficulty is different. What are you so proud of? Sunrise gritted his teeth. Oh really? Difficulty? He he he. With that, Lu Ming suddenly strode forward to the picture of the rising sun and waved his hand. Countless finger shadows flew out and touched the picture of the rising sun. Chapter 879. 879. Yours is a very difficult. At this moment, Lu Ming had pointed at least 30 fingers. Oh! The roars of the beasts were continuous. Giant wallevers, fierce tigers, eagles, and other demonic beasts flew out and howled at the sky. On the upper left corner, the number representing the number of formations began to soar. In the beginning it was 43. In an instant it rose to 75. In a single breath the number had soared to 75. However, this was not the end. Lu Ming waved his fingers and the sky was filled with finger shadows. At a terrifying speed he continuously pointed. The number continued to rise. 5 breaths. In just 5 breaths that number had soared to 99. He found all of them. Within 5 breaths Lu Ming had pointed out all the formations. This. Countless people's eyes were wide open. Their mouths were as wide as half of their faces. They all had the same expression as they looked at Lu Ming in a daze. Silence. The entire place was silent, not a single sound was made. This was too terrifying. He had found all the formations in 5 breaths. This had never happened before. This guy. Bai Qixue's beautiful eyes were filled with excitement as she looked at Lu Ming. Jimai Yentongtong, Mengjia, and the others were also shocked. Your drawing, is it very difficult? Lu Ming's gaze shifted back to the rising sun as he spoke indifferently. These words were like a series of slaps on Sunrise's face, causing his face to flush red as if it was about to bleed. His eyes were bloodshot and his body was trembling violently. He was still in shock. He had just said that Lu Ming's picture was simple and he was just lucky. But now, he had pondered hard for a long time and only found 43 of the pictures that he had chosen. He had also said earlier that his pictures would definitely be more difficult than Lu Ming's. The most ironic thing was that he could not find a picture after racking his brains. He said that it was more difficult than Lu Ming's, but Lu Ming found it with a wave of his hand in less than 5 breaths. Could there be anything more ironic than this? Compared to Lu Ming, he was simply blind and useless. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. Tianyun, don't be too pleased with yourself. Identifying formations is just a test of one's eye of discernment. You've only read a few more books on formations and inscriptions and that's all. However, in the Tao of inscription, not only will knowledge be useful, it will also require application. If you can't use it, you're just a nerd. Sunrise growled. He did not believe that Lu Ming's Tao of refinement was that impressive. Like some people, he thought that Lu Ming had only seen more inscription arrays. Is that so? Lu Ming smiled faintly and turned to leave. He could not be bothered with the rising sun. Not bad. In the sky, Bai Shijin stroked his beard and laughed. Bai Shijin, don't be happy too early. He has received the inheritance of our master, and has mastered the inscription formations. It's only natural that he can recognize all the formations in the pictures. The main thing is to look at the back. Du Songjue said. That's true. Bai Shijin nodded. They were conversing through voice transmission so no one else could hear them. Alright, half an hour hasn't passed yet. If you want to continue searching, then quickly continue. At this moment Meng Chong announced. Jimai Yentonghua Mengjia, and the others perked up and continued their search. Very quickly half an hour had passed. Everyone's results were already out. More than 3,000 people had participated, and more than half of them had been eliminated. Only 1,500 people had passed the first round. Without a doubt, Lu Ming's results were first. The second place was Jimai. He found 67 formations. The third place was a young man named H. Ming, who had found 65 formations. Yin Tongtong and Mengjia were tied at fourth place, having found 62 formations. The other God-tier heaven's favorites all had less than 60 and more than 40. Bai Qixue's result was unexpectedly good. She actually found 45, 2 more than the rising sun. The first round of the competition had officially ended. Now let's begin the second round, the all-formation tower. Meng Chang's voice resounded through the entire area. Everyone looked to the east of the White Jade Square. There was a pagoda there. It was thousands of meters tall and reached into the clouds. It occupied a vast area. This was the All Formations Pagoda. Meng Chong walked in the air and arrived near the Thousand Formation Tower first. I believe most of you know that the Thousand Formations Pagoda is divided into 36 levels. There are many great formations inside, and they change endlessly. The power will be different according to the difficulty of the choice. The formations at the bottom are relatively simple. The higher you go, the more difficult it is. Only by breaking those formations can you get to the next level. The second round of the competition will be held in the Thousand Formations Pagoda. The difficulty level is medium. Only those who can pass the 12th level will pass and enter the next round. Meng Chong announced. What? The intermediate difficulty required one to pass all Tulivir levels? Such high requirements. I'm done for. I just passed the All Formations Pagoda not long ago. I can only reach level 9. I can only make it to the 10th level. It's over. I'm most likely going to be eliminated. As soon as Meng Chong's words fell, the surrounding people sighed. Lu Ming was curious. He had seen this All Formations Pagoda on the map that Bai Qixue had given him. It was a place for talisman amulet sect disciples to cultivate. Lu Ming had not been here before. Some people sighed while others had calm eyes, clearly knowing what was going on. That was because most of them had come to pass the All Formations Tower, and there was a rough estimate of how many levels they could pass. Alright, there are a total of 15-16 people who have passed the first round. Each time 500 people will enter. Now let's begin. Meng Chong announced. Suddenly, many figures rushed towards the Thousand Formations Pagoda. From the bottom of the Thousand Formations Pagoda, a door of light entered and disappeared. Jimai Yentonghua Mengjia and H. Ming, the four of them went in at the same time. This is going to be a good show. This H. Ming is a dark horse. I wonder how many levels the four of them can reach? Around them someone exclaimed. Lu Ming was also watching with great interest. How does the All Formations Tower look at results? How do we know who has passed and how many levels? At that moment Bai Qixue had walked to Lu Ming's side. Lu Ming asked Bai Qixue about it. Did you see that? There's a huge jade tablet beside the Thousand Formations Pagoda. As long as someone enters, their name will be displayed on it. Behind the name it will show the level they have reached. Also, this Thousand Formations Pagoda is absolutely fair. Everyone who goes in will face the same formation. Bai Qixue explained. Lu Ming looked to the side. Indeed, there was a jade tablet there with names appearing on it. There were 500 of them. At this moment, behind the 500 names, there was a wunj. It was obvious that everyone was on the first floor. However, Jimai Yentonghua Mengjia and H. Ming's names were quickly replaced by the word 2. The changes happened almost at the same time. This meant that the four of them had entered the second level at the same time. But not long after, the four of their names became 3 again. Only then did the other heaven's favorites make it to the second level. Chapter 880. 880 Challenging the All Formations Pagoda. So fast. Jima Yentongtong Mengjia and H. Ming are so fast. They've reached the third level so quickly. Oh, the strength of the four of them is already stronger than the others by a level. Who is this H. Ming? I've never heard of him before, but he's actually this strong? I heard that he was a disciple secretly trained by an elder. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the jade tablet, observing the changes in the names on it. At this moment, the names of Jimai and the other 3 appeared at the top, shining brightly. As time passed, the number of levels they passed continued to increase. Very quickly, Ji-mai and the other three made it past the 10th floor. At this moment, some people had already been eliminated. The worst was to make it to the 5th level, somewhere at the 6th level, the 7th level. Starting from the 5th level, there were people being eliminated on every level. The 1000 formation pagoda flickered with light as talisman amulet sect disciples were transported out. The people who were teleported outside. Soon Ji-mai and the other three passed level Tulavir. From the 13th level onwards, the speed of the four of them slowed down. That was because from the 13th level onwards, the difficulty would increase by a huge margin. 2 hours later, more than 430 out of the 500 people who had entered were eliminated. They had not passed level 12. The elimination rate was terrifyingly high. Only 60-odd people had passed level 12. After passing through the 12th level, there were also people who were constantly being transported out. The number of people who remained in the 1000 formations tower was getting fewer and fewer. Meanwhile, Ji-mai had already reached the 23rd floor. Yen Tongtong, Mengjia, and H Ming had also reached the 22nd floor. Below, there were rooms on the 20th and 19th floor. What level do you think Ji-mai can reach? I estimate that at the 26th and 27th level, the difficulty will increase sharply for every 12 levels. From the 25th level onwards, the difficulty will be even greater. That's right. I also think that Ji-mai can only make it to level 27 at most. Yen Tongtong and the other two will be even worse off. Yes, that's about it. Even among the 13 Zongzi's candidates, only a few of them can pass the 30th level and above in the intermediate difficulty. Many people were discussing. As time passed, more and more people were teleported out. In the end, only Ji-mai, Yen Tonghua, Mengjia, and H Ming were left. At this moment, Ji-mai had already reached the 25th floor, while the other three were on the 24th floor. After reaching the 25th floor, Ji-mai's speed was like a turtle crawling. He was much slower and was stuck on the 25th floor. He was unable to reach the 26th floor. It didn't take long for Yen Tongtong and the other two to reach the 25th floor. An hour later, the number behind Ji-mai's name changed from 25 to 26. Ji-mai had reached the 26th floor. This time, after 2 hours, Yen Tongtong and the other two reached the 26th floor. This time the wait was even longer. After 3 hours, Ji-mai finally reached the 27th floor. Fortunately, they were all cultivators. They could wait for months, let alone hours. This time, it didn't take long for Ji-mai to appear on the 27th level of the All-Formation Pagoda. It seemed to be a coincidence. Less than 2 minutes after Ji Ziming stepped out, a bright light flashed on the 20th floor. Yin Tong, Mengjia, and H Ming were all teleported out. The three of them could only make it to the 26th floor. Alright, now that the first batch of people has come out, the next batch will continue. Meng Chong announced. Buzz, buzz, and NBSP whoosh. Oh, one by one they rushed in. Lu Ming was not in a hurry. He watched with great interest. Oh. After the second group of people entered, the names on the jade tablet all changed to the names of the second group. Time flew by and night soon fell. Inscriptions glowed around the white jade square, forming pillars of light that brightened the white jade square as if it were daytime. Soon everyone was teleported out. In the second group there was no one who was particularly amazing. The highest was only at level 25. Sunrise was also in the second group. He only made it to the 24th level before he was teleported out. Now the third batch. The rest of you go in, Meng Chong announced. The last batch had 516 people. Lu Ming and Bai Qixue followed the crowd and rushed into the 1000 Formations Tower. Countless gazes were fixed on the jade tablet. Tianyun has entered. I wonder how many levels he'll be able to reach? Tianyun's array analysis is very powerful. Challenging the all-formation pagoda is related to the array analysis. I think his results won't be bad, and he should be able to pass level 20. After the 20th level? You value him that much? That's right. He's really good at identifying arrays. I guess he can find the weaknesses of many arrays. As long as his Tao of inscription is not too bad, his results in the 1,000 Formations Tower will not be too bad. You're right. However, in the end, he still needs to rely on his strength to pass the All Formations Pagoda. The 24th level is his limit. It's almost impossible for him to pass the 25th level. Many people expressed their opinions. There was a flash of light and the surrounding environment changed. Lu Ming found himself in a valley. As soon as he appeared, formations appeared around the valley. The formations condensed into more than a dozen combat swords and slashed at Lu Ming. They're all low-grade level 6 formations. Lu Ming took a glance and understood everything. With a step, inscriptions spread out from the ground and entered the formations. The formations collapsed and disappeared. The surroundings changed again. This time they were in the middle of a forest. Lu Ming speculated that he had already reached the 2nd level. In the forest, formations appeared as well. This time Lu Ming was faster. He took a step forward and runes appeared. He destroyed the weak points of the formations and caused them to collapse. The people outside were right about one thing. Lu Ming had sharp eyes. He could tell the weaknesses of these arrays with one look and could break them easily. Lu Ming's speed was incomparably fast. He passed through the levels one by one. The environment and the array techniques that appeared on each level were different, but it was not difficult for Lu Ming. His speed was like a hot knife through butter. So fast. Tianyun's speed is so fast. He's already reached the 10th level. Outside, someone exclaimed. In the third group of people, Lu Ming's speed was far ahead. His eyesight is indeed extraordinary. The level of the array below the 12th floor is not high and is relatively simple. It is not difficult for him to break it. But after the 13th floor, his speed will definitely slow down. That's right. After the 13th level, it's impossible to rely on your eyesight alone. Look, he has passed the 12th palace. Someone cried out in shock. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the jade tablet, on the first place Tianyun's name. The name was displayed according to the name recorded in the identity token. The identity token recorded by Lu Ming in the Talisman Amulet sect was called Tianyun. Very quickly, the entire place fell silent. This was because after Lu Ming reached the 13th level, his speed did not slow down. He was still as fast as he was on the previous Tulavir levels. Chapter 881. 881 Chapter 881 Clearing. On the jade tablet, the number behind Tianyun's name kept jumping, seemingly unable to stop Lu Ming. Oh! When Lu Ming reached the 20th level, the sovereigns who were ranked behind him were the fastest. They had only passed the 12th level. The difference was too great. The rest of the people around the square kept their mouths shut. Those who said that Lu Ming was just relying on his judgment also kept their mouths shut. How could he break the formation so quickly just by relying on his eyesight? Even they themselves did not believe it. Damn it! Detestable! In the crowd, Sunrise was roaring in anger. The other paragons who had been beaten up by Lu Ming before also had ugly expressions. The number of levels that Lu Ming had cleared was still rising rapidly. Not long after, Lu Ming successfully broke through level 24 and rushed to level 25. At this level, Lu Ming's speed finally slowed down a little. This made many people let out a long sigh of relief. If Lu Ming's speed of breaking the array was still as crazy as before, they would really doubt whether Lu Ming was still human. It was normal to be slower. Even if it was just a little slower, they would feel much more comfortable. In the Myriad Formations Pagoda, there was a desert. Lu Ming stood in the middle of the desert. The strong wind whistled, blowing the desert and filling the air with sand and dust. Every grain of sand was shining with light, as if every grain of sand had been set up with a formation. The difficulty of cracking this was rather high. Lu Ming's eyes were shimmering with light. Endless wild sand appeared in his eyes. Buzz! An NBSP whoosh! Oh! His fingers moved, and thousands of phantoms appeared in the space. Countless inscriptions were born from his fingertips, rushing in all directions and disappearing into the dust. Just now, Jimai took a full hour to pass level 25. However, 10 minutes later, the strong wind stopped and the desert disappeared. Lu Ming appeared on the 26th floor. Amazing! Jimai said, his eyes were filled with surprise. The other heaven's favorites, such as Yentong, Mengjia, and Hming, were shocked. They had all reached the 25th level and knew how difficult it was. However, Lu Ming had only used 10 minutes to pass it. It was terrifying. I wonder how many levels Tianyun will be able to reach. Someone asked. No one said anything, even those who liked to make comments before. The key was that the previous remarks they made about Lu Ming were never accurate. They were also blushing and ashamed. How would they dare to express their opinions easily? They might be slapped in the face by Lu Ming again. It was better to watch quietly. 26-27. Very soon Lu Ming had passed the levels and surpassed Jimai, who was previously in first place. Moreover, the time he used was much shorter than Jimai. However, this did not stop. The challenge continued. 30-31, 32-33. 2 hours later, Lu Ming had cleared the 33rd level and entered the 34th level. It's the last 3 levels. I heard that the last 3 levels are extremely difficult. Even the other 13 Zongzis have not been able to pass them. The strongest stopped at the 35th level. That's right. Although it's only the intermediate level, the difficulty of the last 3 levels is also very terrifying. I estimate that the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion will stop at the 35th level at most. As the crowd discussed, some people couldn't help but express their opinions. At that moment, the last batch of people had already come out. Lu Ming was the only one in the Myriad Formations tower. Among them, Bai Qixue made it to the 25th floor, which was quite an achievement. Bai Qixue's talent was amazing, otherwise, she would not have been accepted as a disciple by Shijin, a leader of a sect and a supreme master. Everyone waited in silence. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. He's moving. Tianyun has charged through. Suddenly someone exclaimed. The number behind Lu Ming's name had changed to 35. 35th step. This was already the record for the strongest Heaven's Pride expert of this generation. In the Myriad Formations pagoda, light shone and countless inscriptions flickered. A large formation emerged, forming a terrifying saber radiance that slashed at Lu Ming. Each of these blade lights could easily kill an existence at the peak of the 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm. And here there were hundreds of blades shining. Of course, if one was hit by the blade light here, they would not really die. They would only fail to pass the level and be transported out. Lu Ming took a few steps forward and his fingers moved quickly. Runes appeared one after another, forming a large array. Shields appeared and blocked Lu Ming's surroundings. The saber beams were blocked by the shields. Then Lu Ming began to step forward and form an array. He searched for the weaknesses of the big arrays and began to crack them. However, the formation on this level seemed to be endless. After one was broken, another one would appear. Lu Ming continuously inscribed runes and continued to crack them at a very fast speed. Time passed by slowly. 2 hours later, no new array appeared. Lu Ming successfully cleared the 35th level and appeared on the 36th level. At this moment, the outside world was in an uproar. Lu Ming had actually passed through the 35th level and entered the 36th level, breaking the record of this generation. Of course, the other 13 Zongzis hadn't cleared the intermediate level of the All Formations pagoda for many years. The records they left behind were all from many years ago. Otherwise, the 13 Zongzis, who were ranked in the top 100 on the list of top 1,000 talents, would definitely be able to pass the medium difficulty level of the 1,000 Formations pagoda. Even if they were powerful, they could still pass it. Another 3 hours passed, and on the jade tablet, Tianyun's name glowed brilliantly, emitting a golden light. This meant that Lu Ming had cleared the level. A wave of shocking cheers and shouts of disbelief erupted from the audience. Lu Ming had actually cleared the level. Was his Tao of inscription also so terrifying? Or was his eyesight already so terrifying that he could accurately find the weakness of the formation? The 1,000 Formations pagoda shone with a golden light and Lu Ming was teleported out. Countless eyes were on Lu Ming. At this moment, some people had already revealed looks of admiration. In the second round, without a doubt, Lu Ming came in first. Then, Meng Chong announced the names of the people who passed the second round. There were a total of 200 people. Out of more than 1,500 people, only 200 people successfully advanced. The rest were all eliminated. The elimination rate was really high. Now, the 200 who have advanced will proceed to the third round. The third round will be a battle of strength, Meng Chong announced. Then he waved his hand. In the center of the white jade square, inscriptions glowed, and a huge bronze ancient fighting ring appeared. Then Meng Chong announced the rules. The third round was a test of overall strength. Formations, puppets, inscription talismans, and spirit weapons could all be used. However, there was one point. Inscription talismans had to be made by the user. The winner would advance and the loser would be eliminated. Until the top 3 were selected, they would be rewarded with the opportunity to cultivate on the observatory. As for who would fight who, it was completely up to Meng Chong. Now whoever's name I call will go up the stage, Meng Chong announced as he swept his gaze across the crowd. Everyone's spirits were lifted. Tian Yun. Meng Chong called out the first name. Chapter 882. 882 The Sullen Rising Sun. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They had not expected Meng Chong to call out Tian Yun first. Oh, Lu Ming was stunned as well. He did not expect to be the first to go on stage. However, he did not care. It did not matter which rank he went on stage. Lu Ming moved and rushed up to the fighting ring. Sunrise. Then Meng Chong reported another name. The crowd went silent, and then they all revealed strange smiles. Meng Chong was the first one to let Lu Ming fight against the rising sun. This was definitely intentional. The corners of Lu Ming's mouth curled into a smile. This supreme Meng Chong was really interesting. In the crowd, Sunrise's eyes flickered. He stepped into the air and walked onto the fighting ring. Tian Yun, even though you've passed level 36 of the Thousand Formation Pagoda, I'm guessing that you've done so by relying on martial arts, right? Can you break through with your Tao of Inscription? You're courting death, Su'ai said coldly as he stared at Lu Ming with a cold gaze. The eyes of the people around the white jade square flickered. I think Sunrise's words make sense. That's right. In the Thousand Formations Pagoda, no one could see how Tian Yun sure broke through the formations. Perhaps he broke through with the power of martial arts. His martial arts are indeed very terrifying. Yes, martial arts can also break arrays. Why didn't I think of this before? Maybe it's true. Then it's not that impressive that he passed the 36th level. After all, his power of martial arts is really strong. If the other 13 Zongzis were to challenge the medium difficulty level of the Thousand Formations Pagoda, they would be able to pass quickly. The discussion around them grew louder and louder. Many people had suspicious looks in their eyes. They all thought that Lu Ming had relied on the power of martial arts to clear level 36 of the Thousand Formations Pagoda. Just watch. No matter what, martial arts can't be used in the third round. You can only rely on the Tao of Inscription. We'll soon find out whether the Tao of the Heavenly Cloud is strong or not. Not bad. Just watch. Some people were more rational and did not rush to make a conclusion. On the fighting ring, Sunrise smiled smugly when he saw that his words had aroused everyone's suspicion and caused them to deny all of Lu Ming's achievements. Humph, Tian Yun, let's fight purely with the Tao of Inscription. I'll let you know that it was your mistake to hit me last time. I'll pay you back 10 times over. Sunrise gritted his teeth. During this process, Lu Ming's expression was very calm. He was carefree as if he did not care at all. Are you done with your nonsense? If you're done, let's start. The others still want to compete. Lu Ming spoke indifferently. From his tone, it was as if he did not care about the rising sun. Since you're so eager to be abused, I'll fulfill your wish, Sunrise said coldly. Then he strode forward. With every step he took, an array would appear on the fighting ring. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen large formations appeared on the fighting ring. These large formations condensed monstrous flames and surged toward Lu Ming. Bang! Lu Ming took a step forward and runes spread out from under his feet. They seemed to be alive and swam to the array set up by the rising sun. Sunrise's array formation was like a bubble. With a pop it disappeared. The flames that filled the sky also disappeared. What's going on? Sunrise was shocked. He then roared and waved his hands. On the ground another formation appeared. However, the formation had only emerged halfway when Lu Ming took a light step forward. The formation that had just emerged from the rising sun disappeared with a puff. Sunrise bellowed angrily and continued to inscribe the array. However, Lu Ming took another light step and Sunrise's array also appeared halfway before disappearing. Impossible! Sunrise's eyes were red. He roared and continued to set up the array. The blue mental energy fire between his brows was dancing wildly. However, Lu Ming was expressionless. With his hands behind his back, he walked casually on the ground as if he was taking a stroll in a courtyard. With every step he took, the formation that was half formed by the rising sun would collapse and dissipate. What a brilliant method of breaking formations! Every time Sunrise tried to inscribe a formation, Tianyun would be able to accurately see through the weakness of his formation and break it. A white-haired old man stroked his beard and nodded his head repeatedly with a surprised look on his face. Many people recognized him as an elder of the Talisman sect. He was a level 8 inscriber and extremely powerful. Since the level 8 alchemist had spoken, there was no mistake. Many people gasped, their eyes filled with shock. To think that Tianyun would be able to see through the weakness of the rising sun formation even before it was completed, or perhaps even just halfway through its inscribing process. This was truly terrifying. If it was a complete formation, it would still make sense if it could see through the weakness. But for a formation to be able to find its weak point before it was fully inscribed and before it could even fully display itself, how it would operate was still unknown. It wasn't even clear what inscription the other party wanted to inscribe. This was too terrifying. Moreover, Lu Ming could easily take a step forward and quickly break the rising sun's array. His control of the mental energy fire was extremely amazing. This was a slap to the face of the rising sun. Earlier on, didn't Sunrise say that Lu Ming used martial arts to break the array in the Myriad Array Pagoda? Now Lu Ming would let him see what he had to use to break the array. Was it the martial Tao or the Tao of inscription? At this moment Sunrise's face was red. He bellowed continuously. Every time he was halfway through inscribing the array, Lu Ming would break it. That feeling was too uncomfortable. It was as if he had strength but could not use it. Every time he was halfway through he had to hold it back. He almost vomited blood. In the end, he roared in anger and retreated quickly. With a wave of his hand, 9 huge puppets appeared and formed a battle formation, charging at Lu Ming. Lu Ming sneered and took a step forward. Suddenly, dense inscriptions appeared on the ground. A huge formation emerged and 9 combat swords condensed. With one slash, the 9 puppets of the rising sun were cut in half. At the same time, another formation appeared under Sunrise's feet. Vines flew out and wrapped around Sunrise. Then the formation glowed, and one fist after another condensed and rushed toward the rising sun. No, I admit defeat. No, Sunrise shouted, but it was too late. The endless fists drowned him out. Only his shrill screams could be heard on the fighting ring. When the fist disappeared and the formation was hidden, Sunrise was lying miserably on the fighting ring. His body was covered in wounds and his face was swollen like a pig's head. No one could recognize him. Looking at Sunrise's miserable appearance, many people felt cold all over. Heart of the Earth. His usage of mental energy fire has reached Heart of the Earth. Impressive. It was still the 8th grade alchemist. He stroked his beard and spoke with admiration. What? Tianyun has actually reached the state of heart? Many people were extremely shocked. There was only one step between the minute and the heart, but the difference was like heaven and earth. Other than the 13 Zongzi candidates, only Ji Mai, Yen Tongtong, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming had reached the state of heart supremacy. Now there was another Tianyun. Chapter 883. 883 Chapter 883 Advancing. Now, no one had any doubts that Lu Ming had used martial arts to clear the Myriad Formation's tower. Oh! His eyesight was too terrifying and he could easily see through weaknesses. Furthermore, his control of mental energy fire had reached the heart realm. Perhaps he could really pass through the 36th level. Wasn't this too shocking? Tianyun's martial Dao was so terrifying. And even his Dao of inscription was so terrifying? How were the others supposed to survive? Ji Mai Yin Tong Hua Mengjia and H Ming's eyes turned serious. This time, perhaps Tianyun would be a formidable opponent. Haha, not bad, not bad. In the sky Du Songjue by Shijin, and the others nodded and laughed. It seems that this little guy still holds grudges. Bai Shijin laughed. He was referring to the incident where Lu Ming beat the rising sun into a pig's head. This is what a real man should do. When the other party bullies you, of course I have to fight back. I think Lu Ming is my type. No wonder this kid can cause a war in 9 dragons. Du Songjue stroked his snow-white beard and laughed. Ever since they found out that Lian Song was killed by Martial Emperor Du Songjue and the others from the puppet sect had given up on the idea of joining Martial Emperor Di's side. All they could think of now was how to fight against Martial Emperor Di. Therefore, Du Songqing's opinion of Lu Ming had changed greatly. He naturally hoped that Lu Ming would be as strong as possible. It would be best if Lu Ming could lead the Talisman Amulet sect to fight against Martial Emperor Di in the future. That's true. However, Lu Ming's array is all about fists. Where did he learn it from? Why have I never heard of such an array? Bai Shijin asked, puzzled. The formation condensed a fist, and it wasn't very powerful. It was as if it was specially used to beat people. They had lived for thousands of years and had never seen such a formation. However, they soon found out the answer. Since you're looking for trouble, I can only fulfill your wish. This is a formation I came up with 2 days ago. It's quite effective, right? Lu Ming walked to the front of the rising sun and smiled. Lu Ming had mastered countless inscriptions from Dandan. All arrays were made up of inscriptions. Lu Ming had nothing to do for the past 2 days and had conceived such an array. It was very effective when used to beat people up. In the sky by Shijin Du Songjue, and the others were stunned as they looked at each other. As it turned out, this array was developed by Lu Ming and it was specially used to beat people up. At the same time, they were also very shocked that Lu Ming could actually develop his own array. This was something that could only be done with an extremely strong foundation. Sunrise's eyes were so swollen that he could not open them. He moved his body with all his might, full of fear towards Lu Ming. Tianyun wins this battle, Meng Chong announced. Lu Ming smiled and got off the fighting ring. Someone went up and helped Sunrise off the fighting ring. Good job, Tianyun. Bai Qixue was so excited that her face turned red, and she clenched her fists. The competition continued. Meng Chong called out names and they began to fight one-on-one. Lu Ming stood below and looked at the fighting ring. Lu Ming had seen many battles between warriors, but he rarely saw a battle between inscription masters. Lu Ming watched with interest as he watched all kinds of formations flash and puppets pounce. It was quite interesting. Meng Chong seemed to be doing this on purpose. The God-grade heaven's favorites started to move away from each other, and didn't bump into each other. Soon it was Bai Qixue's turn. Bai Qixue's opponent was not strong, so she won easily. After a day and a night, the 200 people had all finished their battles, leaving only 100 people. The next 100 people continued to fight in pairs, and Meng Chong picked them. This time Lu Ming was at the back of the queue. When he went up the stage, his opponent immediately admitted defeat. This person was not as strong as Rising Sun, but Rising Sun was easily abused by Lu Ming. Naturally, he quickly admitted defeat to avoid further humiliation. Very quickly the top 50 were born. Bai Qixue did not advance. She met a master and failed. Next, it was the competition to advance from the top 50 to the top 25. Those who were able to rank in the top 50 were all geniuses among geniuses. Among them, there were more than 30 god-tier geniuses, while the rest were quasi-god geniuses. The competition continued. This time Lu Ming's opponent was a quasi-god level prodigy. However, he was quickly defeated by Lu Ming's lightning-fast formation. When one's usage of mental energy fire had reached the heart's end realm, the speed at which one inscribed the array was too fast. On the other hand, Ji Mai, Yen Tonghua, Meng Jia, and H Ming also won the competition in a crushing manner. The top 25 had been born. What was somewhat unexpected was that a few god-tier geniuses had been defeated by a few new faces. Without a doubt, these new faces were all new geniuses who had risen up and were all very powerful. Next, there are 25 people. I will choose Ji Mai to enter the top 4 directly. The remaining 24 of you will fight in pairs until the last 3 will fight with Ji Mai for the top 3. Do you have any objections? At this time, Meng Chong's voice reverberated throughout the entire area. No objections. I have no objections. The other 24 people chimed in. Ji Mai was too strong, he would definitely lose if he went up against him. It was better to let him advance directly so that they would not meet him in advance. The others would naturally agree. This time Ji Mai's strength was recognized as the number 1. Alright, since you've all agreed, then Ji Mai will not need to compete for the time being. Next, the top 12 will be from the top 24. Yen Tong will fight Gao Lu. Meng Chong announced. Yen Tong flew up and his opponent was a beautiful lady. She was also a god-tier genius. Yen Tong belonged to the puppet sect, and was good at controlling puppets. Gao Lu belonged to the talisman sect, and was good at inscription talismans. Gao Lu took out 6 Class 9 Level 6 inscription scrolls. They shone with all kinds of lights, some for protection, some for attacking, and some for trapping enemies. With a wave of his hand, Yen Tong summoned to Lavir puppets. Each of the 12 puppets was not at Class 9 Level 6 but Class 10. The 10th level of the 6th level had already surpassed the 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm, and was equivalent to the Great Circle of the spiritual ocean realm. It could also be considered a half-step spirit embryo realm. Inscription scrolls and puppets were very similar to the classification of demonic beasts, and corresponded to martial arts. An inscriber's strength had little to do with the division of mental energy fire. It mainly depended on the formations one inscribed, the inscription talismans one had mastered, the puppets one controlled, and so on. Yen Tong, for example, was controlling 12 Class 10 Level 6 puppets at the same time. It was equivalent to 12 perfected Spirit Sea Realm experts attacking together. Furthermore, he had set up a formation, and the power was extremely terrifying. Yen Tong, ranked 115th on the list of top 1,000 talents, had terrifying strength. The powerful puppet easily tore through the defense and attack of the golems and defeated them. After that, Meng Jia and H Ming did the same. They displayed astonishing strength and defeated their opponents, entering the top 12. Tianyun versus Feng Tai. Meng Chong's voice sounded. Lu Ming stepped forward. When he saw his opponent, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Feng Tai, ranked 183rd on the list of top 1,000 talents, was very powerful. He was also the Heaven's Pride expert who had been beaten up by him last time. Feng Tai looked at Lu Ming with an ugly expression. He had been beaten up by Lu Ming previously and he had lost a lot of face. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.